Chapter 1942. Getting out of hand. The golden-robed young man spoke very casually, without treating Jian Chen with any importance at all. Even though he had no idea who Jian Chen was, he believed that there was no reason for him to learn this at all given his personal status. This is the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. There are clear rules that forbid fighting. Do you plan on ignoring them? Jian Chen stared at the golden-robed young man calmly. Rules? The young man sneered and stared at Jian Chen like he was a joke. Rules only affect ordinary people. As for me, I can ignore them. Seeing how Jian Chen and the golden-robed young man were in conflict, Xing'er and Lan'er were naturally delighted. Moreover, they did not forget to fan the flames. That's right. With young Master Zhou's status, these rules indeed do not affect him. Young Master Zhou, what are you rambling on about with this person? Why don't you hurry up and do it? The two of us find him irritating just by looking at him. The golden-robed young man smiled from ear to ear when he heard them refer to him as young Master Zhou. He felt extremely happy. When he heard their soft and sweet voices, he felt power swell up within him. Not only was this the first time the two princesses had called him young Master Zhou, but this was also the first time they had spoken to him in such a gentle tone. The sudden change with the two princesses did not make the young man feel that something was off. Instead, it roused him. He believed that this was a great opportunity to show off his strength to the two princesses. The young man suddenly grew serious as a condescending expression filled his face. He said in a voice that he believed to be very dignified, which left no room for argument, after you cripple this person's cultivation, look into his background. His crimes for offending the two princesses are so great that just crippling his cultivation isn't enough. The clan behind you has to pay a certain price as well. If he doesn't have a clan and is only an independent cultivator, his crimes will be passed on to his parents. We'll get your parents to pay. The young man spoke extremely coldly as if he controlled Jian Chen's life. He did not realize that the two princesses' personal guards had said nothing when they personally witnessed someone fight for what the princesses wanted as well. Jian Chen's face became cold in that instance when he heard that the young man wanted to touch his parents. At the same time, the people behind the young man arrived before Jian Chen. Two of them lunged at Jian Chen, while the others all took out their saint artifacts and swung them at Jian Chen's limbs without any mercy at all. One of them stabbed his sword towards Jian Chen's dantian. Xing'er and Lan'er watched on as they took things easy. They smiled as if their scheme had succeeded. They knew Jian Chen's strength and also knew that he had the support of a primordial realm expert. However, they just wanted to make trouble for him so that he would not have an easy life. Jian Chen did not even look at the people who attacked him. His gaze was locked onto the young man. He flicked his fingers a few times, and a few strands of sword chi flew out rapidly. Ding! 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 With a series of metallic sounds, the saint artifacts in the hands of the people who attacked Jian Chen snapped at that moment. Moreover, the sword chi from Jian Chen did not disperse after destroying their saint artifacts. It continued on without weakening at all, heading towards their bodies. All the people who tried to lay their hands on Jian Chen staggered backwards as they shrieked out. Their faces became extremely pale, as they had already been heavily injured. The power from the laws of the sword wreaked havoc within them, making them all spurt blood. Jian Chen turned into a blur. He arrived beside the golden-robed young man in a single instance and grabbed him tightly by the neck. He said coldly, I only planned on giving you a small punishment originally, but you should have never, ever threatened my parents. Even if God Kings do that, I will make them pay the price. With that, there was a sudden flash of light from his hand that held the young man's neck. Sharp strands of sword chi entered the young man's body in an extremely brutal method, directly heading towards his dantian and obliterating it. The young man trembled violently. Blood spurted from his mouth like a fountain. Unfortunately, Jian Chen's hands were wrapped around his neck, so he could not make any sounds at all. Otherwise, his miserable shrieks would have probably shocked everyone already. Afterwards, Jian Chen smashed the young man's head gently before throwing him onto the streets outside like a dead dog. He did not even glance back at him. Jian Chen's strike had almost shaken the young man's soul into pieces. He directly fell unconscious. Fortunately, Jian Chen had no intentions of killing him. He had only heavily injured his soul, so it would be difficult for him to recover. His dantian was destroyed, and his soul had almost dispersed. Even if the young man managed to survive these wounds, he would basically be reduced to a cripple. After doing all that, Jian Chen acted as if nothing had happened at all. He arrived beside the spatial fantasy meteorite and stared at Xing'er and Lan'er. He said coldly, "I will pay 3 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystal for this piece of spatial fantasy meteorite. Do you still want it?" The 2 princesses stared at the golden-robed young man who laid on the street like mud in a daze. Using the senses of their soul, they completely understood the young man's wounds, which completely shocked them. They were no longer in the mood to fight over the spatial fantasy meteorite with Jian Chen anymore. In the end, Jian Chen purchased the spatial fantasy meteorite for an astronomical price of 3 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystal. However, Jian Chen had obtained Yaxi Lian's huge wealth. Even though 3 blocks of supreme-grade divine crystals was a huge amount, he did not feel any pain when he spent it at all. Zhou Chu has actually been crippled. Isn't this a little too vicious? After all, behind Zhou Chu is, Xing'er and Lan'er only looked at one another. Their faces were rather ugly. They had realized that the matter had gotten out of hand. They wanted to find trouble for Jian Chen, but they never thought he would be so vicious, directly crippling Zhou Chu. They never expected something like that. A case where deliberate injuries were caused had happened in the imperial capital. Naturally, the matter spread rapidly. In a short amount of time, the area around the young man had become packed by people who had heard of the news. Many of them stared at the young man and pointed as they discussed. "That seems like young Master Zhou Chu of the Skycloud Sect. Heavens, who is bold enough to injure the young master like this?" The Skycloud Sect is one of the peak sects in the Xiandao Empire. Even the imperial family must show them respect. Their status is extremely great. I heard that Zhou Chu is the descendant of one of the sect's primordial realm ancestors. Now that Zhou Chu has been beaten to a pulp, almost to the point where he's a cripple, the Skycloud Sect will probably never just let this matter be. Nephew Zhou Chu. As people discussed among themselves, a cry rang out from the sky. A white-robed, middle-aged man descended as he gave off a tremendous pressure. He stared at Zhou Chu, who laid on the ground, with an ugly expression. Who did it? Who was it? Who injured nephew Zhou Chu like this? When the white-robed man checked Zhou Chu's wounds, he became utterly furious as extremely intense killing intent radiated from him. Chapter 1943, Battling Fei He. The killing intent directly caused the temperature of the surroundings to plummet as if it had become a cavern of ice. The bustling street had already become completely crowded. However, everyone shivered from the white-robed, middle-aged man's killing intent. They felt it pierce their bones, and all of them could not help but back away. Even overgods behaved like that. God King. Countless people cried out inside while their gazes towards the man became filled with angst from the bottom of their hearts as well as some envy and eagerness. God King was a cultivation level that they could only dream about. It was their life goal. Who? Who is it? Who did this? The white-robed God King was extremely furious as he bellowed out. Then, his gaze locked onto the store where Jian Chen was before long. This was because a few disciples from the Skycloud Sect still laid on the ground inside. Their blood had formed pools on the ground, giving off a metallic smell. In the store, the 2 princesses behaved innocently. They looked at Jian Chen with some pleasure due to his situation before leaving the store with their guards. However, the 2 of them did not walk off. They stood nearby and observed with great interest. The white-robed God King naturally recognized the 2 of them. After glancing past the 2 of them, he glared at Jian Chen. At this moment, Jian Chen had also emerged from the store after putting the spatial fantasy meteorite away. He saw the God King's murderous gaze, but he remained completely calm and composed. Did you injure Zhou Chu? The God King's gaze was extremely terrifying. With that, the monstrous presence of a god king radiated from him, crushing down on Jiangchen like a mountain. At this moment, another powerful presence appeared. An armored, middle-aged man with a striking appearance had appeared in the air. In the distance, large squadrons of armored, Imperial Guards hurried over quickly. It's General Jean of the Imperial Guards from the Imperial capital. People cried out when the armored middle-aged man appeared. General Jean appeared there and glanced past Zhou Chu, who had basically been crippled. He immediately frowned. He deeply understood just how special Zhou Chu's status was in the Skycloud sect. Of the two primordial realm ancestors of the Skycloud sect, one of them was Zhou Chu's senior. Now that Zhou Chu had become so heavily injured in the imperial capital, he would not be able to separate himself from the matter as the general responsible for order in the imperial capital. General Jin's face instantly sank. He glanced around, and just when he was about to ask who the troublemaker was, he suddenly discovered Jiangchen and was stunned. His sharp instincts allowed him to realize who the troublemaker was, so he immediately felt a headache overwhelm him. He had no idea what to do. The people on both sides both possessed great backgrounds. Neither of them could be offended. That's right, I injured him. Are you going to ask why I injured him? Jiangchen stared at the God King responsibly and said calmly. Fellow Jiangchen, brother Fei He, there are some misunderstandings in this matter. Let's not jump to conclusions. We can talk after we've looked through the entire matter, said General Jean. Originally, he had rushed over here aggressively to arrest the troublemaker, but now, he could only try to persuade both parties gently. A misunderstanding? Nephew Zhou has already become so injured. It doesn't matter what kind of misunderstanding there is, as it'll definitely develop into a grievance. General Jean, there's no need to say anything more. It doesn't matter what this person's background is. He has to pay for what he has done, the God King said coldly. It was impossible for him to not tell that Jiangchen's background was not simple from General Jin's attitude. However, they, the Skycloud sect, had truly never feared anyone before. Since you've crippled Zhou Chu, I'll cripple you as well, and then I'll take you back to the sect so that the ancestors can handle your punishment, said the white-robed God King. With that, he directly extended a finger towards Jiangchen. His gesture possessed the power of laws in the surroundings. God King level laws instantly condensed around the finger, shooting towards Jiangchen's dantian as a chain. Oh no, retreat. The expressions of the people who watched on from the surroundings changed when they saw the white-robed God King strike out. They all fled wildly. The might of a God King's attack was simply too powerful. With their strength, they would be drawn into the attack even with the protection of the powerful formations in the imperial capital if they were too close. General Jean was filled with bitterness. He did not believe that Jiangchen was Fei He's opponent, but there was also a terrifying existence behind Jiangchen, so he could not allow anything to happen to him at all. However, just when General Jean wanted to stop Fei He's attack, a powerful sword chi suddenly appeared below. It stunned the general. With a flash of golden light, it shot towards Fei He with energy that was terrifying enough to surprise General Jean. Behind the golden strand of sword chi, Jiangchen wielded the starling rainbow sword. He seemed like he had fused with his sword as he radiated with intense light. He followed the golden sword chi, lunging towards Fei He as if he was unstoppable. Boom! The golden sword chi collided with Fei He's chain. It was like a high-speed collision of two planets, shattering into pieces with a deafening sound. It turned into a terrifying shockwave of energy that swept out. Immediately, a formation appeared in the imperial capital, completely isolating the energy so that it could not even leave a scratch on the city itself. A light flashed through Fei He's eyes. He stared at Jiangchen in shock. Through Jiangchen's presence, he could obviously tell that he was not a god king and just a peak over god. An over god had actually managed to block his attack in an open confrontation and not lose the upper hand. It was unbelievable. But clearly, Jiangchen's attack had not ended. After the Daoist sword shattered, he charged through the region where energy wreaked havoc while he was coated in white light, lunging towards Fei He. In a single instance, he had arrived before Fei He. It's actually a supreme overgod from the overgod's plaque. Fei He said coldly. He did not become flustered at all when he faced Jian Chen's attack. He swung his hand calmly, directly catching Jian Chen's startling rainbow sword. Jian Chen sneered. The power of laws and chaotic force immediately erupted from the startling rainbow sword, dispersing the layer of power of laws around Fei He's hand. Even though Fei He was a god king, it was impossible for his body alone to handle the sharpness of the startling rainbow sword. Jian Chen used some force to cut through Fei He's hand. He stabbed out as a smear of blood spurted out from Fei He's hand. Jian Chen directly went for his heart. Fei He's eyes exploded with light. At that moment, his gaze had become extremely shocked. In the next moment, a sword appeared in his hand. It danced and struck Jian Chen's startling rainbow sword with lightning speed, knocking it aside. Tai sword technique. Jian Chen's reaction was extremely quick. He formed a seal and fused with his sword. As a sword, he directly rammed towards Fei He. During this time, Jian Chen's entire body seemed to have become a sword of great might, giving off a monstrous presence. Chapter 1944, Shocking Battle Prowess, What a Powerful Overgod. Fei He felt secretly shocked. The strength that Jian Chen had displayed filled him with disbelief. In an open confrontation against him, Jian Chen had failed to lose the upper hand and even managed to draw blood. Fei He's face sank when he saw the blood on his hand. This wound was nothing to him, but the disgrace would be permanent. This person must rank within the top 3 on the Overgod's plaque. Only people as great as them can possess such unbelievable battle prowess, Fei He thought quickly. However, his movements did not slow down. As his hand changed between seals, the sword immediately began to spin rapidly before his chest. Rings of powerful, spiral sword chi appeared as the sword spun. It radiated with powerful pulses of energy as well as a might that belonged to the world. As a mighty god king, Fei He was actually using a battle skill against an overgod's attack. World-shattering, form of the mountain splitter. Fei He bellowed out. The sword that spun around stabbed out with lightning speed along with a strand of powerful, spiral sword chi. The strike was extremely powerful. As the sword tore through the air, the spiral sword chi shook, causing the space in the surroundings to pulse and gently tremble. The might of the world had caused the distant crowd to retreat rapidly once again. The might of a god king's battle skill was extremely shocking. To many of the people who were not even overgods, it was almost impossible for them to witness a god king using a battle skill. As a result, the pressure naturally made many of them feel like the world was ending. General Jin's expression changed drastically. He was in a hurry to stop Fei He. He knew who stood behind Jian Chen, so once that terrifying primordial realm expert behind him became angered from Jian Chen's injuries, the consequences would be unthinkable. He had heard that the powerful primordial realm expert had even gone as far as to spend a valuable 3-colored divine crystal on the disk of heavenly ways to venture to the distant southern region. The expert even captured a commander of the 9 armies, humiliating her before everyone. However, Fei He ignored him. As a mighty god king, an overgod had injured him. If he did not make the overgod pay a certain price, he would never be able to quell his anger. There's going to be a lot of trouble, General Jin swore inside. He was already too late to stop Fei He. He had witnessed Jian Chen's strength and understood he possessed the battle prowess to fight god kings in an open confrontation. However, the battle skill of a god king was on a completely different level compared to the casual strike of a god king. Moreover, the battle skill was of an extraordinary grade. It was one of the most powerful battle skills from the Skycloud sect. Even General Jin would have to take it on seriously if he was on the receiving end of the attack. Everything happened in a split second. There was a deafening boom, and Jian Chen's Tai sword technique had already collided with Fei He's battle skill. The observers all sensed the eruption of a terrifying energy. The ground shook violently, and they lost sight of Jian Chen and Fei He completely. The violent energy shockwaves had completely drowned out their figures. I hope Jian Chen doesn't become too heavily injured, or how can I supposed to resolve everything? General Jin silently prayed for Jianchen. Everything had happened just too quickly, where he did not have the time to stop it at all. Linear lightning release. However, a bellow suddenly rang out from the violent storm of energy. Everyone only saw a streak of white light shoot through the storm of energy at an unbelievable speed before disappearing into the distant sky. It was just too fast. Countless people failed to see it clearly at all. Even General Jin only managed to barely see a blurry, elongated figure in the streak of light through the senses of his soul, even though he was a god king. A while later, the rampaging energy dispersed and revealed Fei He. Currently, Fei He's face was rather pale, and he was filled with shock. He stared at his chest in a daze. His chest had already been dyed red with blood. A fist-sized hole had appeared, stretching from his chest through to his back. All his organs had been destroyed already. Meanwhile, Jianchen had vanished. General Jin stared at the hole in Fei He's chest in a daze. His face was also filled with shock as his heart churned. Immediately, he cast his gaze into the distance afterwards. He saw that in the direction the white light had vanished off into, Jianchen stood on the startling rainbow sword as he traveled back towards here like a comet. He moved extremely quickly. In just a few seconds, he had returned. What happened? How did that young man suddenly run off to such a distant place? How did that young man leave? Among the countless observers, quite a few of them stated their confusion. Oh my God! Sister Lana, look, look! Senior Fei He of the Skycloud sect has been injured. Xing'er also stared at Fei He's wound in shock from nearby as she shook Lanner's arm. Lanner was also stunned. She rubbed her eyes firmly while her cherry lips were agape. She was extremely shocked. Even against an overgod who's much weaker than you must be reasonable even if you are a god king. Although overgods are much weaker than god kings, they're not people you can just harass. Jianchen stared at Fei He as he stood on his sword in the air. Fei He raised his head all of a sudden. He glared at Jianchen, and there was even heavy killing intent in his gaze. He was a mighty god king, yet an overgod had injured him like this. The humiliation coupled with Jianchen's cold tone made the shame he experienced multiply. Gradually, it turned into killing intent. Jianchen's face remained the same when he sensed the killing intent from Fei He. He said coldly, "There is no reason for you to feel humiliated after being injured by my hands because you are not the first god king to be injured by me. Before you, I've personally killed a god king while I was injured." Fei He's eyes immediately became filled with shock when heard that. He was speechless. Even General Jin became stunned by Jianchen's words. An overgod had actually killed a god king while he was injured. If this feat made it out, it was enough to spread across the entire Saints world. This was because it was just too shocking. In the end, Fei He shot a sharp glance at Jianchen. He snorted coldly before leaving with Zhou Chu, who laid there like mud. This overgod's strength had left him deeply shocked. He knew that even if he remained here, he probably would not be able to benefit. The matter at hand was for him to hurry back to the sect and report it to the higher-ups. Chapter 1945, Visitors from Outer Space. After Fei He left, General Jin arrived before Jianchen. He stared at him with some lingering fear. Even though he had personally witnessed the earlier scene, he still found it difficult to accept that an overgod had actually injured a god king. To General Jin, it was like a dream, unrealistic. "Brother Jianchen, are you fine?" General Jin asked with much concern. Even his way of referring to Jianchen had changed. At that moment, General Jin completely treated Jianchen as an equal. He even showed some respect. As a god king, he was insurmountable. Even in the Xiandao Empire, god kings possessed extremely great statuses and were people who possessed authority. There was no need for them to behave like this before overgods at all. However, General Jin could not help but be so polite right now. Jianchen shook his head, expressing that all was fine. He did not recognize the armored god king before him, so after exchanging some simple pleasantries, he directly left and returned to the imperial palace. "Sister Lanner, did that really just happen? That pervert is clearly only an overgod. How did he beat a god king? Xing'er said as she held Lan'er hand. Lan'er sucked in a deep breath and gently patted her own chest, slowly calming herself down. She said firmly, "It's real. Sister Xing'er, we've underestimated this person. His strength is enough for him to rank amongst the top 3 on the Overgod's plaque at the very least." The top 3, Xing'er immediately covered her mouth. At the same time, Tian Shuang stood in a garden within the forbidden grounds of the imperial palace as she stared in Jian Chen's direction. She sighed in amazement. I never thought this Jian Chen would be so powerful. He fought a god king as an overgod and still managed to achieve victory when the god king used his battle skill. Even though this was due to the god king's underestimation, it's not easy for an overgod to injure a god king. No wonder Sister How Yu values this person so much. With the battle prowess he has shown today, his future will definitely be limitless. I just wonder how he compares to the supreme overgod who ranks first on the overgod's plaque. Jian Chen paid no attention to the disturbance the battle had created. He had already returned to his temporary residence in the Xiandao Empire now. Jian Chen sat before a table in the decorated room. The table was covered with neat bottles. There are over 10,000-year god origin pills. With so many and the 8 god king level plant and monster cores from Fei He, I'll be able to reach the 12th layer of the chaotic body. However, the 12th layer of the chaotic body is equivalent to God King, but my current level of comprehension remains at Overgod. As a result, I have to quickly increase my comprehension of the laws of the sword, or I won't be able to reach the 12th layer, Jian Chen thought. It's just that increasing my comprehension to the major achievement of sword spirit is difficult. Back on the battlefield on the boundary of the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the southern region, a piercing smell of blood filled the air. It did not disperse no matter what, and just a single whiff of it was enough to cause people to vomit. Corpses had already formed a thick layer on the battlefield while the blood had pooled into huge lakes. The battle that had lasted for so many days had created all this, claiming countless lives. The battle continued. Several dozen god kings from both sides fought in a particularly intense battle in outer space. The tremendous shockwaves of energy in outer space could even be clearly sensed from the distant ground. Below the god kings, the overgods fought at an altitude of several tens of thousand meters. They also fought with great intensity. Many of them were already covered in blood. They had not rested at all since the battle began. Countless soldiers gathered in the fortress below, standing in formations to fend off the 10,000-man formations from the Empyrean demon cult. The 10,000-man formations had been reduced to over a dozen from the initial 30. Both sides suffered losses in the battle. Let alone overgods, even 2 or 3 god kings had died. The sound of a zither hung in the surroundings. It expanded as a visible sound wave, stretching across the entire battlefield. The sound possessed an irresistible charm. When it rang out, all the people on the battlefield were affected to varying degrees. The armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian all became filled with fighting spirit and courage from the sound. They charged at their enemies with extraordinary determination while their battle prowess was fully displayed as well. Under the influence of the sound, many people from the Empyrean demon cult felt their heads grow heavy as their consciousness blurred. In the end, they could only use 70 or 80% of their strength. Originally, the Empyrean demon cult's assault had forced the armies of the divine kingdom of Pingtian into a retreat. However, with the Zither's appearance, they were finally able to gather together, becoming matched in strength with the armies from the Empyrean demon cult. On the walls of the fortress sat a beautiful woman in a purple dress. Her beauty was indescribable, so great that it would probably be only seen in heaven. An ancient zither rested on her legs. As her slender fingers stroked the strings, she produced music that was filled with charm. Each note formed a visible ripple of sound. Each note possessed the might of laws. This woman was Shangguan Mu'er. The news of the patriarch of the Tian Yuan clan, Jian Chen, being taken away by the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian, had already spread by now. Naturally, Shangguan Mu'er heard the news as well, so she could no longer pay heed to Jian Chen's orders for her to remain in the clan from worry. She hurried to the front lines as soon as possible. Her arrival had basically turned the situation here around. Beside Shangguan Mu'er stood Sacred Feather, Houston, Roy Jean, and so on. They stood around her sternly, protecting her and stopping any people from disturbing her. All of them were covered in blood and suffered different levels of injury. Aside from them, the god ancestors from the Dong'an province stood around her as well, taking part in her protection. From the Empyrean demon cult, there were constantly overgods who wanted to break free from their fight and stop Shangguan Mu'er from playing her zither, but they would be completely entangled with their opponents, which made the matter impossible. The overgods on the Divine King's side naturally understood just how important Shangguan Mu'er's existence was to the battlefield below, so they all kept their opponents busy to the greatest of their ability. 2 streaks of light suddenly shot past a place distant from where the several dozen god kings fought in outer space. They moved with unbelievable speed such that even god kings would only be able to catch a blur. The streaks of light directly shot past the skies of the cloud plain, traveling towards the depths of space. However, when the light passed by the southern region of the cloud plain, it suddenly reversed before stopping above the southern region in the end. It was extremely distant from the cloud plain, even several tens of million kilometers away from where the god kings fought. Only now was the streak of light visible. It was a small flying vehicle that radiated with powerful pulses of energy. Among them was the might of the laws of the world. The flying vehicle was a god artifact. It's the third ancestor's zither of the demonic cry. 2 graceful, middle-aged women emerged from the flying vehicle. Celestial bodies flickered through their eyes as their gazes resonated with the laws of the world, directly piercing the distant space and locking onto Shangguan Mu'er, who was located in the fortress on the boundary of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. Shock filled their faces. Chapter 1946. The Daoist Sect of Divine Sound. The 2 middle-aged women stared at Shangguan Mu'er from the distant outer space. Their gazes became uncertain. One of them said, "The zither of the demonic cry is a treasure bound to the third ancestor's life in the past. It also symbolizes her. Now that the zither has appeared with this woman, and this woman possesses quite impressive accomplishments in the way of music, is she the reincarnation of the third ancestor?" As soon as she mentioned the reincarnation of the third ancestor, her face became filled with excitement. She felt very eager. The other woman stared at Shangguan Mu'er and studied her seriously. She said with an extremely firm voice, "No, she's not a reincarnation of the third ancestor. She is only someone who obtained the third ancestor's treasure out of coincidence. If she was really the third ancestor's reincarnation, the artifact spirit of the zither of the demonic cry would have been awakened long ago. At the same time, she would have already returned to the sect." Sigh. It really isn't the reincarnation of the third ancestor. Although she can use the zither of the demonic cry, she can't use a sliver of its power at all. At the same time, she only possesses a connection to the zither of the demonic cry. It has not accepted her as its master. But since she can obtain the third ancestor's zither of the demonic cry, it's her fate. At the same time, she also obtained a type of approval from the zither of the demonic cry, so we should accept her into our sect. As they spoke, the 2 middle-aged women were already flying towards the fortress of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. They moved extremely quickly, crossing an extremely great distance with a single flash. They appeared before Shangguan Mu'er silently. The 2 middle-aged women just floated there. They completely concealed their presences, so they seemed like ordinary people. It was impossible to discover their existences through the senses of the soul. They 2 of them stared at Shangguan Mu'er and paid no attention to the chaotic battlefield in the surroundings. Shangguan Mu'er, Sacred Feather, and so on saw the 2 middle-aged women suddenly appear in the first moment. Their faces all changed suddenly. Sacred Feather, Roy Jean, and the others immediately arrived next to Shangguan Mu'er as their faces became filled with caution. They did not attack. They could sense that the 2 women were powerful. "Seniors, may I ask for the reason why you have come?" Shangguan Mu'er asked. Although she spoke, she never stopped playing the zither. Child, do you know the origins of the zither in your hand? A middle-aged woman asked. Her gaze towards Shangguan Mu'er was filled with gentleness. Although this was the first time she had seen Shangguan Mu'er, she felt a sense of closeness towards Shangguan Mu'er due to the zither in her hands. Shangguan Mu'er's eyes narrowed. She already knew that the zither of the demonic cry was not as simple as it seemed, and she had guessed that it probably had important origins. The woman seemed to know about the zither of the demonic cry. Junior does not know. If Senior is willing, please enlighten Junior, said Shangguan Mu'er. She multitasked, playing the zither to disturb the armies of the Empyrean demon cult as she conversed with the two women. The middle-aged woman looked at the zither of the demonic cry, and a sliver of reminiscence appeared on her face. The owner of this zither was a peak, famed expert of the saints' world in the past. She was also one of the 3 ancestors of our Daoist sect of divine sound. We called her the 3rd ancestor. After a period of silence, Shangguan Mu'er said, "To be frank, Senior, I obtained the zither of the demonic cry accidentally in a lower world. Since this belongs to your esteemed sect's 3rd ancestor, I will return the zither after the battle." Shangguan Mu'er was helpless as she said that. The strength of the two women before her was unfathomable. If she wanted to take the zither away with her forcefully, she still would not be able to keep it. The middle-aged woman who spoke before shook her head with a smile. "We only passed by this plane incidentally and came across the 3rd ancestor's treasure that was bound to her life, which was why we came to have a look. We don't want to take away the zither of the demonic cry. The zither of the demonic cry is rather special. It was nurtured for many years by the 3rd ancestor's flame of life, so it's slowly metamorphosed from an ordinary object. It holds part of the 3rd ancestor's vital energies, so the zither of the demonic cry is similar to a saint or god artifact, yet not one. It was just that with the 3rd ancestor's death, the zither of the demonic cry vanished. Originally, we believed it had been destroyed in that great battle. We never thought we'd come across it again today." The woman paused there and stared at Shangguan Mu'er with great interest. Then, she continued, "Since you were able to obtain this zither in the lower world, it means that fate has led you to the zither and our Daoist sect of divine sound. Even though our sect has requirements for accepting disciples that are extremely strict and require many stages of selection, you can directly join our Daoist sect of divine sound since you have obtained the 3rd ancestor's zither of the demonic cry." At this moment, the other woman said, "Child, get ready, and you can leave with us so that we can go back to the Daoist sect of divine sound. The sect is located in the central region of the Skyfire Plain. It's extremely distant from the Cloud Plain such that you won't be able to cover the distance by yourself. That's why we have to take you with us." "No, you can't take Sister Mu'er away," Sacred Feather said firmly. "Seniors, I am currently busy with important matters, so I am unable to go to the Daoist sect of divine sound with the 2 seniors. Moreover, I never agreed to join," said Shangguan Mu'er. The 2 middle-aged women ignored Sacred Feather. They said to Shangguan Mu'er, "You obtained the 3rd ancestor's treasure, so you must join our Daoist sect of divine sound. Moreover, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you. And I assume you are referring to this battlefield by important matters? This is easy to deal with." With that, the middle-aged woman looked at the divine king and the vice-leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huaiyan. At this moment, the battle between Huaiyan and the divine king had reached an extremely crucial point. They had discovered the arrival of the 2 women, but they did not become distracted at all. Their battle seemed peaceful, but it was actually extremely dangerous. "You must be the people behind the battle. It's about time you finish your game of chess," said the middle-aged woman. Her voice seemed to possess a mysterious power, turning into a ripple that engulfed the chessboard between the 2 of them. Boom! Suddenly, the chessboard exploded without any prior signs, immediately ripping open space as devastating energy. It directly expanded in all directions. The energy was so powerful that it was enough to cause over-gods to feel despair. Even the expressions of the god kings changed drastically. The terrifying energy had erupted after 2 primordial realm experts had charged it up for a very long time. "Disperse." Suddenly, the middle-aged woman called out with much composure. Her voice seemed to transform into the laws of the world, directly dispersing the devastating energy. The Divine King and Huayan both retreated in horrible shape. The middle-aged woman had forcefully stopped their battle. The Divine King stood on the fortress walls as he stared at the two women sternly. He felt shocked by the power of the woman. Greetings from Huayan, vice leader of the branch on the cloud plane of the Empyrean demon cult. May I ask who the two seniors are? Huayan clasped his fist at the two women and asked calmly. The Empyrean demon cult? The two middle-aged women mumbled to themselves as they immediately frowned. Child, you can't interfere with the battles of the Empyrean demon cult. Even if you remain here with your current strength, you won't be able to turn the situation around in the end. Sure, you may be controlling it barely, but with the Empyrean demon cult's strength, getting through it won't take any effort at all. Come with us, one of the middle-aged women said to Shangguan Moor. Child, you can't interfere with the battles of the Empyrean demon cult. Even if you remain here with your current strength, you won't be able to turn the situation around in the end. Sure, you may be controlling it barely, but with the Empyrean demon cult's strength, getting through it won't take any effort at all. Come with us, one of the middle-aged women said to Shangguan Moor. Thank you for your concern, seniors, but I don't want to leave right now. My husband has been captured by the commander of the 7th Army, and his situation is currently unknown. If I don't find my husband, I won't leave here, Shangguan Moor said firmly. Dumb child. You obtained the third ancestor's supreme treasure. Once you join our Daoist sect of divine sound, your status will definitely be extraordinary. It won't be like the regular disciples. If you have potential, our Daoist sect of divine sound will definitely spend resources to nurture you, giving you a chance to rise up. As for your husband, he can't even deal with a mere commander from the Empyrean demon cult. How can someone like him have you, a disciple from the Daoist sect of divine sound, as his wife? Child, forget your husband. You will definitely rise up among people. In the future, your accomplishments will be so great that your husband can only look up to you. He's not suitable for you, the middle-aged woman said sincerely. With their cultivation levels as primordial realm experts, there was completely no need for them to speak so politely to an over-god. However, the third ancestor's past status in the Daoist sect of divine sound was so great that it could not be surpassed. She had also been a supreme expert that the two of them respected very much. Since Shangguan Moor had obtained the third ancestor's supreme treasure, their attitude towards her changed. Our Daoist sect of divine sound is located in the central region of the Skyfire Plain. In the future, if the people from your clan want to visit you, come to the Skyfire Plain to look for us. Child, it's time for us too. Once you get to the Daoist sect of divine sound and witness the prodigies raised by those large sects on the Skyfire Plain, you will discover that the husband you miss so much is actually nothing. With that, the two middle-aged women directly waved their hands and took Shangguan Moor away with them, whether she agreed to it or not. Sister Moor! Sacred Feather cried out. His eyes were filled with fury, and he immediately pursued them. However, with his strength, it was impossible for him to follow two primordial realm experts. In the blink of an eye, he had lost their tracks. Houston, Roy Jean, and the others on the fortress all revealed very ugly expressions. Shangguan Moor had just been taken away right before them, yet there was nothing they could do. It filled them with a sense of grievance, and they also felt extremely helpless. First, Jian Chen had been taken away by the commander of the 7th Army, and his current situation was unknown. Now, Shangguan Moor had been taken away as well. The people from the Tian Yuan clan felt gloomy over this. Shangguan Moor's departure naturally had an extremely great impact on the battlefield. Without her music, the soldiers of the Empyrean demon cult immediately became more and more courageous as they fought. They were able to use their full strength again. On the other side, the armies of the Divine Kingdom were unable to maintain the balance when they faced off against such a violent army. They immediately lost the upper hand. Even though they possessed a numerical advantage, their strength was on a completely different level. Kill! Roy Jean yelled out and charged onto the battlefield with a heavy heart. Houston and the others also charged towards the soldiers of the three armies afterwards. They did not say anything. As for the divine king, he stood on the fortress walls as he stared at the vice leader of the Empyrean demon cult, Huayan. Neither of them could send out an attack, as once they did, a battle between primordial realm experts would start. In the imperial palace of the Xiandao Empire, Jian Shen had just bid farewell to a few princes from other empires and prodigies from other sections. He returned to his temporary residence by himself, and a sliver of exhaustion appeared on his face. In the past few days, his battle against Fei He of the Skyclouds sect had already spread across the entire northern region, with the news of his victory included. It had raised the attention of many large organizations in the northern region. As a result, people from different places constantly visited him in the past few days. They were either the princes from a few empires, young masters from large clans, or disciples of large sections. With so many prodigies gathered together, there was naturally some fighting. At the same time, they felt doubt towards Jian Chen's rumored strength. As a result, Jian Chen faced the challenges of many prodigies in the past few days. At the very start, he turned them down, but the more he turned them down, the more they wanted to challenge him. In the end, the people who challenged him only increased. In the end, after running out of choices, Jian Chen could only spar with the prodigies, revealing some of his strength. However, through this, Jian Chen befriended quite a few prodigies from those large sects and princes from the empires. He had learned about all sorts of odd matters in the northern region from them. At this moment, a young man seemed to be around the same age as Jian Chen rushed over in a hurry. He said, "Brother Jian Chen, Princess Tian and the fifth prince of the Shi Empire have come to visit. They want to see you." The young man directly arrived before Jian Chen. He was both overjoyed and excited. He said enthusiastically, "Brother Jian Chen, it's Princess Tian and the fifth prince. Do you know great their statuses are in the Shi Empire? Please tell me, Brother Yan Shun." Jian Chen's eyes lit up when he heard the Shi Empire mentioned. This young man was called Yan Shun, and he was a prince of the Xiandao Empire. In the past few days, basically all the princes in the Xiandao Empire had expressed their goodwill towards Jian Chen. They did their best to establish a relationship with Jian Chen. As a result, Jian Chen basically knew all the princes in the Xiandao Empire. Prince Yan Shun cleared his throat and explained in a hurry, Princess Tian's nobility was personally conferred by the Shi Emperor himself. It's said that she is connected to the Empress by blood. Not only is she the Empress Junior, but she's also one of the most beloved people of the Empress. It's said that in the Shi Empire, apart from the Shi Emperor, she's the closest person to the Empress. The imperial family in the Shi Empire is just too vast. All the children of the emperor become princes and princesses, while the descendants of the siblings of the emperor also become princes and princesses. As a result, there are plenty of princes and princesses in an eternal empire. But in reality, many princes and princesses only have this status. They're actually extremely distant from the emperor. As a matter of fact, there are a few princes and princesses who have never even spoken to the emperor before. However, Princess Tian is someone who can visit the Empress whenever she pleases, and the Shi Emperor had personally conferred her title to her. As a result, her status in the Shi Empire is so great that almost no one can match up to her. As for the fifth prince, he's the person that the Shi Emperor appreciates the most. The father of the fifth emperor had the best relationship with the Shi Emperor when the Shi Emperor was still a prince. As we all know, the Shi Emperor has no children. Even though the fifth prince does not directly descend from the Shi Emperor, many people believe that the Shi Emperor is raising him as his successor from how much he appreciates him. Prince Yan Shun told Jian Chen everything he knew about Princess Tian and the fifth prince. He did not put up any haughtiness as a prince before Jian Chen. "Brother Yan Shun, let's go then. Let's meet Princess Tian and the fifth prince as soon as possible." Jian Chen's eyes shone brighter and brighter after listening to Prince Yan Shun's introduction of Princess Tian and the fifth prince. In the end, he hurried off in a manner even more urgent than Prince Yan Shun. "Brother Yan Shun, let's go then. Let's meet Princess Tian and the fifth prince as soon as possible." Jian Chen's eyes shone brighter and brighter after listening to Prince Yan Shun's introduction of Princess Tian and the fifth prince. In the end, he hurried off in a manner even more urgent than Prince Yen Shun. He was extremely attached to his friends and family in the southern region, except he could not leave since he was trapped in the northern region right now. Now that Princess Tian and the fifth prince who possessed great status in the Shi Empire had come to visit, Jianshen saw a sliver of hope of him leaving the northern region. Under Prince Yen Shun's lead, Jianshen passed through beautiful hall after beautiful hall before arriving in a majestic hall at the very heart of the imperial palace. Jianshen saw a male and female seated in the hall as soon as they entered. They were young and they were talking with the emperor of the Xiandao Empire leisurely. The woman possessed a beauty that was enough to outshine the moon. She was filled with a presence of nobility, making her seem divine and otherworldly. The young man seemed righteous. His eyes shone brightly, and as he spoke, he naturally revealed a somewhat dignified presence as well as a firm resolution. He seemed a little like a ruler. He vaguely possessed the presence of a ruler, like a true dragon. No wonder the Shi Emperor appreciates the fifth prince so much. If the fifth prince becomes the emperor, he'll definitely be a great, talented one. Jianshen studied the man and woman in the hall. Without any introduction, he knew that they must be Princess Tian and the fifth prince from the Shi Empire. In particular, Jianshen had gained an impression of the fifth prince from the first glance. In the past few years, Jianshen had seen quite a few princes, but it was rare for anyone to possess the fifth prince's presence. As a result, he could not help but take notice of the fifth prince. The emperor stood up and nodded at Jianshen with a smile. Afterwards, he introduced him to Princess Tian and the fifth prince. Fifth prince, Princess Tian, this is fellow Jianshen from the southern region. The graceful Princess Tian and the imposing fifth prince immediately stood up when they heard that. They clasped their fists at Jianshen and exchanged pleasantries. You young people should talk. I'll go deal with some matters first, the emperor said to them extremely politely before leaving with Prince Yen Shun. In the blink of an eye, only Jianshen, the fifth prince, and Princess Tian remained in the majestic hall. Jianshen, there's no need for you to refer to me as the fifth prince. That'll be alienating me instead. My name is Shi Hao, so you can directly call me that, smiled the fifth prince. Afterwards, he looked at Princess Tian beside him and said, as for the Princess Tian beside me, her name is Shangyin Shuixian. Aside from being the Princess Tian of our Shi Empire, she's also the treasured daughter of the Shangyin clan. Greetings. You are welcome to just call me Shuixian. Princess Tian smiled faintly and nodded at Jianshen slightly. After mingling with quite a few princes and prodigies in the past few days, Jianshen gained a rough understanding towards the division of strength on the cloud plane. Naturally, Jianshen knew about the Shangyin clan. Although the Shangyin clan was not located in the Shi Empire, they were a famed clan in the northern region. Many ancient empires and large organizations had to show them respect. This was because the current empress of the Shi Empire came from the Shangyin clan. Afterwards, Jianshen and the fifth prince conversed freely. Clearly, the fifth prince wanted to rope in Jianshen, so he completely put down his identity as a prince of the Shi Empire. He only behaved like an ordinary friend. The fifth prince was extremely patient. Although he wanted to rope in Jianshen, he had not mentioned a single word of it. As they conversed, Princess Tian would add a little to the conversation from time to time. She asked Jianshen questions about cultivation modestly. She revealed respect and admiration for Jianshen through both her tone and expression. Shi Hao, Lady Shuixian, I'll be honest. I have extremely important matters that require me to rush back to the southern region as soon as possible, but the entire northern region is currently sealed by the Shi Emperor. I was wondering if you had any methods for me to get back to the southern region as soon as possible. Jianshen finally mentioned his main intentions after talking for several hours. The fifth prince and Princess Tian frowned when they heard that. After a moment of thought, the fifth prince said, Jianshen, this matter is rather troublesome. If it was any other time, I can easily let you use the regional teleportation formation at our Shi Empire. Even if the regional teleportation formation at the Shi Empire is unavailable, I believe I'll be able to borrow the teleportation formations in the ancient empires and some large organizations with my prestige. However, now that Uncle Ziyun has personally sealed up all the teleportation formations in the northern region, basically no one will go against his word in the northern region with his current prestige. It's impossible for the ancient empires to be bold enough to use their teleportation formations, and even the teleportation formation at Arshi Empire has been closed as well. You can only use it if you gain the approval of Uncle Ziyun or the ancestral emperors. The fifth prince smiled in a self-deprecating manner. Jianchen, don't try to depend on the fact that I'm one of the princes of the Shi Empire right now. Princes like me can't just meet with the ancestral emperors of the Shi Empire. As for Uncle Ziyun, he's currently locked in a stalemate against the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect. And with Uncle Ziyun's temperament, it's extremely likely that he'll start fighting with the heaven-cracking sect. I'll only displease him if I go find him now. The regional teleportation formation at our Shangyin clan is closed as well. Jianchen, we probably won't be able to help you with this, said Princess Tian as well. Jianchen became disappointed with that. He said, the Shi Emperor is just a little too vicious. He really isn't going to let off anyone who hunted him down in the past. The Shi Emperor had captured an imperial protector of the Shi Empire earlier, and now he has gone to go deal with the heaven-cracking sect, a peak sect in the Shi Empire. If this continues, it'll be very bad for the Shi Empire. Moreover, the Shi Emperor's revenge has trapped many people here, making them unable to leave. Jianchen felt very helpless. Yeah. Uncle changed drastically after ascending as emperor. He wasn't like this before. It's just a pity that no one can persuade and convince Uncle in the current empire. Even the ancestral emperors can't do anything about him, the fifth prince added helplessly. Faint worry appeared on his face. In the current imperial family of the Shi Empire, only a few primordial realm experts were left after all the slaughtering his uncle did. It filled the entire empire with angst and unease. Princess Tian sighed gently from that. She became slightly depressed and said gloomily, actually, you can't blame Uncle. Everything is bound by karma. If it weren't for the relentless pursuit of the people before, causing Aunt to lose her daughter, my uncle would have never become like that. What? Lose her daughter? The fifth prince was stunned. Even Jianchen became surprised. He stared at Princess Tian. At this moment, Princess Tian suddenly returned to her senses. She realized her mouth had slipped, so she immediately covered her mouth tightly out of surprise. Shuaixian, what did you just say? My uncle lost her daughter when he was hunted down in the past? Why haven't I ever heard my uncle mention he had a daughter? The fifth prince stared at Princess Tian in doubt. Shuaixian, what did you just say? My uncle lost her daughter when he was hunted down in the past? Why haven't I ever heard my uncle mention he had a daughter? The fifth prince stared at Princess Tian in doubt. The Shi Emperor had no descendants. Everyone knew that. The fifth prince became rather confused now that Princess Tian had suddenly mentioned he had a daughter. Don't ask about this anymore, okay? If Aunt learns that I disclosed this, she would never forgive me. Princess Tian became rather flustered. A sliver of panic appeared on her face. She knew extremely well just how great of a mistake she had made by accidentally disclosing this secret. The fifth prince and Jianchen realized the severity of the matter when they saw how frightened and flustered the princess had become, so they no longer asked about it. However, they, as sharp-minded people, could draw many conclusions from that small detail. Jianchen, Shihao, don't tell this to anyone else, okay? This is one of the greatest secrets in the empire. There aren't many who know. Princess Tian was no longer able to remain as composed as before. Panic filled her face as she pleaded to Jianchen and Shihao. Don't worry. Shuaixian, will never tell anyone about this. Right, Jianchen? The fifth prince swore. Jianchen nodded as well, promising to not disclose the secret. Princess Tian was no longer in the mood to stay in the Xiandao Empire anymore after this had happened. She bid farewell to Jianchen in a hurry before leaving uneasily. With Princess Tian's departure, the fifth prince naturally did not stay behind all by himself. He gave Jianchen a jade talisman as a method of contact before leaving the empire as well. The fifth prince was extremely clever. He knew that the chances of roping in a supreme prodigy like Jian Chen were almost non-existent, so he did not dare to mention the matter at all before Jian Chen. He only wanted to establish a friendship. If they could become friends, everything would become far easier. Jian Chen accompanied the prince and princess out of the imperial capital before returning to his residence. He thought about how the Shi Emperor possessed a daughter. I never thought the Shi Emperor was only taking revenge for his daughter by killing off so many primordial realm experts. When is this vengeance going to end, so I can return to the southern region sooner? Jian Chen thought. He sat in his residence as he felt very worried. However, Jian Chen's body suddenly jolted at this moment. A rather unbelievable thought had suddenly crossed his mind. He immediately thought it through and analyzed the matter quickly. Right now, basically no one in the Shi Empire knows that the Shi Emperor and his wife had a child. Even the authoritative imperial protectors of the Shi Emperor don't know. Then it's certain that the Empress did not fall pregnant in the Shi Empire. Otherwise, it would be impossible to hide it. It would have become public knowledge long ago. As a result, the Empress' pregnancy probably happened when they were being hunted down. It has been over 2,000 years since then. Also 2,000 years ago, the patriarch of the Mo clan picked up an infant girl outside and she possessed a jade pendant with the words, Shiyu on her, with nothing else. I've seen this pendant. It's made from extremely tough material and is extraordinary. Even I would not have been able to damage it at all in the past. As a result, the person who managed to carve words into the pendant must have been extremely powerful. The time matches, the surname matches, and the gender matches as well. Surely Shiyu isn't. Immediately, Jian Chen felt extremely surprised when he thought up to there. He felt disbelief. After hesitating slightly, Jian Chen suddenly turned towards the direction in which Princess Tian and the fifth prince had left. He chased after them with his full speed. Outside the imperial capital, a luxurious carriage 9 exotic beasts towed quickly shot through the air. Several dozen guards with powerful presences stood close to the carriage. The leader was a god king. Princess Tian and the fifth prince currently sat in there. Shui Xian, can you tell me everything in detail? Since when did my uncle have a daughter? Why don't I know about it? The fifth prince asked out of curiosity. The luxurious carriage was also a treasure that had an extremely great defense. It was covered in formations, so it was impossible to eavesdrop on any conversations happening inside. I need to start from when my uncle and aunt were being hunted down by people. Back then, when they were being hunted down, the Empress accidentally discovered that she was pregnant. After giving birth to the child, my aunt made up her mind to abandon her, as she was out of choices and was unable to protect her newly born daughter. She hoped this could allow her daughter to survive, Princess Tian said slowly. Is that the case? I never thought that I, Shi Hao, would actually have a younger sister. What about afterwards? What happened to my sister? Is there any news? The fifth prince was greatly surprised before questioning in concern. Princess Tian shook her head. Her face was gloomy. The pursuit had forced aunt and uncle to extremely dire straits. They fled across the entire cloud plain, where they were so heavily injured that they almost lost their lives many times. The situation was so dangerous that they did not even know where they had abandoned their daughter. They don't know about her situation right now. It's just that after uncle became the emperor, he offended far too many people for his revenge, so they never dared to make the fact that they had a daughter public. They were afraid that their enemies would find their daughter first. As a result, they could only send trusted subordinates to scour the entire cloud plain secretly. However, it has been so many years, and there's still no news. Princess Tian looked at Shi Hao after speaking up to there. She said, Shi Hao, you understand how important this matter is, right? You can't tell anyone about it. Shi Hao nodded sternly. Shui Xian, I understand. I never thought there would be a secret side to the story of why my uncle changed so much and became so merciless. Now, I don't feel like my uncle has gone overboard at all. At this moment, a guard's voice rang out from outside. Fifth Prince, Princess Tian, Jian Chen has come running. He says he wants to see Princess Tian due to something important. Jianshen has come running? What does he want to do? The fifth prince and Princess Tian were doubtful. Very soon, the carriage came to a halt and the prince and princess dismounted. They hovered in the air as they stared at Jianshen, who had come running after them. Jianshen clasped his fist towards the fifth prince before telling the princess, "Princess Tian, can we step aside to talk about something?" The princess nodded before immediately flying to somewhere far away with Jianshen. The fifth prince stood with his arms crossed. He stared at them from afar and was filled with doubt. He mumbled to himself, "That's strange. Jianshen is suddenly looking for Shuixian. Why?" In the distance, Jianshen cast down a barrier that isolated sound before taking out an embroidered box from his space ring. He said sternly, "Princess Tian, there's something I must request you to do for me. Please directly give this box to the Empress or the Shi Emperor." Princess Tian accepted the box curiously. She examined it in her left hand and asked in confusion, "Jianshen, what is this?" "Just treat it as a little gift for the Empress and the Shi Emperor from me. They might like it. However, you must get the Empress or the Shi Emperor to personally see what is inside," Jianshen said extremely solemnly, as if he was telling her to do something extremely important. "Okay, I'll personally deliver it to aunt and uncle," said the princess before returning to her carriage and leaving with the fifth prince. Jianshen did not leave. He hovered in the sky as he stared in the direction that the carriage had disappeared off to. He thought, although I also crafted that pendant on a whim, both the appearance and engravings are exactly the same as the pendant I saw from Shiyu, apart from the fact that the material is nothing special. If Shiyu really is the lost daughter of the Shi Emperor, they'll naturally recognize it once they see the pendant. If not, there's nothing for me to lose. It's not like the Shi Emperor and the Empress will be offended. In the next few days, the number of people who visited Jianshen decreased. It gave Jianshen a few days of peace. In the next few days, the number of people who visited Jianshen decreased. It gave Jianshen a few days of peace. However, during that time, the emperor of the Xiandao Empire had come looking for Jianshen. He wanted to propose an engagement with Jianshen, where his two daughters, Xing'er and Lan'er, would be engaged to Jianshen. Naturally, Jianshen objected this matter, turning him down without any hesitation at all. Even though he had learnt that the two princesses possessed special constitutions from Fei He, he had no such intentions. Aside from that, the Skycloud Sect, one of the peak sects of the Xiandao Empire, had sent a god king to the imperial palace. He did not come asking for an explanation from when Jianshen injured Zhou Chu and Fei He. Instead, he brought rich gifts and expressed his most sincere apologies, wishing to clean the slate between Jianshen and the sect. Jianshen understood that this was all because Fei He supported him, resulting in a deterrence, which was why the Skycloud Sect was so willing to bow down. There were no great, irresolvable grievances between him and the Skycloud Sect. He did not have any intentions of becoming their enemy either, so Jianshen happily accepted the apology. Two other matters that shook up the entire northern region happened during this time. The first matter was that the first, second, and third armies of the Empyrean demon cult had created a huge massacre near the edge of the northern region in their attack, which directly infuriated the Empress of the Shi Empire. The Empress set out personally and single-handedly killed her way over, heavily injuring the vice leader who watched over the armies in the northern region. With that, the movements of the Empyrean demon cult came to a temporary halt in the northern region. The second matter was even more shocking. After being locked in a stalemate with the Shi Emperor for several days, the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect finally came to terms with the Shi Emperor, handing over the two great elders who had once taken part in the hunt. The news that the heaven-cracking sect had come to terms created a huge shockwave among the various powerful organizations in the northern region. They were all astounded. The heaven-cracking sect also possessed a chaotic prime. Even the imperial family of the Shi Empire had to treat them with respect at other times. However, the ancestor of the heaven-cracking sect actually chose to give in to the Shi Emperor's forceful demands, handing over his two infinite prime great elders. The entire heaven-cracking sect only possessed 3 great elders. No one dares to refuse the Shi Emperor with his might. The Shi Emperor's prestige became even greater after this. People praising the Shi Emperor could be heard everywhere in the northern region. The matter between the Shi Emperor and the heaven-cracking sect has finally come to a conclusion. I hope the seal over the northern region will be released soon. Jianghu sat in the imperial palace as he stared at the tremendous formation in the sky. He was secretly eager. I've completely refined the poison in these plant cores and monster cores. At this moment, Jianghu heard Fei He's voice. She walked over slowly in a white dress and said, "It's best if you don't reveal them in the southern region. Behind them is a prince of the Blood Sun Empire. The status of the Blood Sun Empire in the southern region is equivalent to the Shi Empire in the northern region. You know what the consequences are." Jianghu accepted the plant cores and monster cores from Fei He. They were all fist-sized and had become transparent after the poison within them had been refined. He could even vaguely see pure, powerful energy slowly move about. It was extremely lively. Fei He raised her head towards the sky. She stared at the barrier of light that sealed the entire northern region and said, "Since the matter between the Shi Emperor and the heaven-cracking sect has reached a conclusion, this seal shouldn't last for too long. Tomorrow, some people from the Xiandao Empire will be moving against a large sect that they have grievances with. Once I complete this deal with the Xiandao Empire, I will probably leave the Cloud Plain and return to the Moon God Hall." Fei He struggled to remain calm when she mentioned the Moon God Hall. Her feelings fluctuated slightly. It has been so many years. I wonder how the Moon God Hall is right now. Has my father discovered Nan Potion's schemes? It's a pity that the Cloud Plain is just too far away from the Moon God Hall. It's impossible to find any information about it here at all. A sliver of worry appeared on Fei He's face. Fei He, this Nan Potion must be very powerful, right? If the matters really develop to a point where all the odds are against you, just come back, Jianghu said with hesitance. Although he did not know what was happening with the Moon God Hall, it was quite easy to guess a few things from Fei He's words. In the past, Nan Potion approached peak chaotic prime, but he was quite a lot weaker than my father. If Nan Potion comes to the Cloud Plain, probably no one can match up to him as long as Grand Primes don't appear. In the past, it was because I discovered his schemes against the Moon God Hall that I suffered to his hand. In the end, my body was destroyed, and my soul accidentally fled to the lower world. Fei He growled as killing intent flickered in her eyes. Jianghu sank into his thoughts from that. After a while, he said seriously, "Fei He, I'd advise you to go to the Moon God Hall later. Increase your strength as much as you can first. If the Moon God Hall really has fallen for Nan Potion's schemes, you won't be of any help even if you return given his strength." Fei He nodded gloomily. "Of course, I understand that, but I'm running out of patience. It has already been so many years. No matter what the situation is, I have to go back to the Moon God Hall to take a look. Otherwise, I won't be at peace." There was confidence in Fei He's words. Jianghu also felt helpless when he saw how he could not persuade Fei He. After a moment of silence, he suddenly asked, "Where's the Moon God Hall?" Fei He glanced at Jianghu slightly and said, "It's on the Ice Pole Plain, the place where one of the 7 grand exalts of the Saints' world, the Ice Goddess, stayed. It's also one of the 7 great sacred plains of the Saints' world." Fei He paused before continuing, "The Cloud Plain is extremely far away from the Ice Pole Plain. Just the amount of 5-colored divine crystals needed to take the teleportation formation between planes is extravagant. It's enough to bring an ancient empire to its knees. Even Sister Tian Shuang can't afford this price. It's because I made a deal with the Xiandao Empire, where I would deal with one of their greatest enemies, that they're willing to provide me with enough divine crystals." In the morning of the next day, Fei He left with Tian Shuang and 2 other infinite prime ancestors of the Xiandao Empire silently. Soon after they had left, the formation that sealed up the entire northern region vanished. The Shi Emperor had finally removed his seal on this day. The moment the seal was removed, Jianghu suddenly stood up in his luxurious hall. With a flash, he arrived outside, and he looked at the sky. He had already waited too long for this day. Fantastic. I can finally leave the northern region, Jian Shen said excitedly as he stared at the sky. Without hesitating at all, he immediately went to find the emperor, wanting to leave through the teleportation formation of the Xiandao Empire. He was already filled with worry. Now that the seal was removed, he did not even have the time to bid farewell to Fei He. He wanted to return to the southern region as soon as possible. I wonder if Princess Tian has given the box to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. However, I'm not certain whether Shi Yu is actually their daughter or not. It's just my guess. However, I clearly can't just wait here for the outcome of an unlikely guess. If she isn't their daughter, waiting here is just wasting time. It's throwing everyone from the Tian Yuan clan into danger. If she is, the Shi Emperor will definitely come to the southern region given his love for his daughter. As Jian Shen thought through this, he had already met up with the Emperor successfully. With Jian Shen's status in the Xiandao Empire, borrowing the teleportation formation was naturally nothing. Although he had turned down the Emperor's engagement, the Emperor's enthusiasm towards Jian Shen remained the same. He personally took Jian Shen to the teleportation formation in the Imperial Palace, allowing Jian Shen to use it for free despite the high cost of activating it. With Jian Shen's status in the Xiandao Empire, borrowing the teleportation formation was naturally nothing. Although he had turned down the Emperor's engagement, the Emperor's enthusiasm towards Jian Shen remained the same. He personally took Jian Shen to the teleportation formation in the Imperial Palace, allowing Jian Shen to use it for free despite the high cost of activating it. After stating the position, the teleportation formation immediately activated. With a powerful force, Jian Shen, who stood in the teleportation formation, directly vanished. In the prosperous imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire, the city of Sun and Moon, the streets were bustling as noises and shouts rang out. Smartly dressed officials or high-ranking members of organizations moved along the bustling streets with simply dressed cultivators. Endless stores filled the two sides of the streets and were crowded with people. As an ancient empire that was on the same level as the Xiandao Empire, the Heavenly Moon Empire naturally possessed an imperial capital that was no less impressive than the one in the Xiandao Empire. A few people with quite some status in the southern region gathered here. In the center of the city of Sun and Moon was a castle-like structure. People gathered in there in groups of 3s and 2s. Nearby, 4 extremely profound teleportation formations were carved into the ground. 2 of the teleportations were relatively smaller. They were roughly 10 meters in diameter. As for the other 2 teleportation formations, they were larger, a total of 30 meters wide. Not only were the pulses of energy that they gave off stronger, but the inscriptions were also more complicated and profound. All the people in the castle handed over different sums of divine crystals to an old man there before jumping onto the teleportation formation that was only 10 meters wide and leaving. The second teleportation formation of the same size would flicker with white light from time to time. Each time the white light dispersed, groups of people of varying sizes would appear. One was an entrance, while the other was an exit. Compared to the 2 10-meter-wide formations, the 2 other formations were much more desolate. They would not be used even over several months. However, at this moment, one of the 30-meter-wide formations suddenly emitted a pulse of powerful energy. The energy was so powerful that it was several times greater than the 2 10-meter-wide formations. The regional teleportation formation is responding. Someone is coming from another region. The regional teleportation formation is only used once every several years. It costs an astronomical amount of divine crystals every time. I wonder which great person has come from the other regions. For a time, the people in the surroundings all looked towards the teleportation formation as they discussed softly. Under everyone's attention, a young man who only seemed to be in his 20s appeared in the teleportation formation. He wore white robes, and he concealed his presence. As a result, he seemed like an ordinary person. However, his resolute, handsome face possessed some coldness such that his ordinary eyes made many people present feel a frightening pressure. This person must be an expert. Many people secretly commented around the teleportation formation. Their gazes were filled with envy and respect. To no surprise, the young man was Jian Shen. Jian Shen did not stick around for long. Once he left the teleportation formation, he made his way outside the castle. He purchased a map in the imperial capital and hurried off after gaining his bearings. He did not waste any time at all. When he had chosen a path of retreat for the Tianyuan clan before, he had cast down a teleportation formation in the Heavenly Moon Empire. However, the teleportation formation was extremely distant from the imperial capital of the Heavenly Moon Empire. As a result, he needed to hurry to where he had initially cast down the formation. Only then could he return to the divine kingdom of Pingtian in the shortest amount of time possible. As the ruler of the Dong'an province, the Tianyuan clan was clearly rather lethargic. A stifling atmosphere loomed over Tianyuan clan. This was because the patriarch who supported the clan had already vanished for many days. His situation was still unknown. Jianshen was everything to the Tianyuan clan. Even though the clan possessed other overgods, they were nowhere near close to replacing Jianshen. As a result, Jianshen's disappearance had affected the clan greatly. I hope that the patriarch can return safely. The Tianyuan clan can't afford to lose Patriarch Jianshen. At this moment, Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the former patriarch of the Mo clan, Mo Xingfeng, gathered together. Their faces were all filled with worry. Mo Xingfeng had now become a god after receiving a large number of resources from the Tianyuan clan, becoming an elder of the Tianyuan clan. Right at this moment, their faces froze. Their eyes widened as they stared ahead in surprise. The white-clothed Jianshen slowly made his way out of the forbidden grounds. Patriarch? The three of them cried out in disbelief. At that moment, the three of them were completely puzzled. As everyone knew, the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan had been captured by the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian. There was no news regarding his situation apart from that. But now, the patriarch, who was rumored to be captured by Yaxi Lian, had just emerged from the forbidden grounds in perfect condition. The three of them found this rather difficult to understand. What's the situation at the front lines? Are Sacred Feather and the others fine? Jianshen asked rather nervously with a stern face. He was afraid that something he did not wish to see had happened during the time he was away. Elder Sacred Feather and the others are well, and Elder Sacred Feather and Elder Houston have become overgods, Mo Ling said. He was overly excited, causing his face to become flushed. Jianshen finally let out a breath of relief. He could not help but smile slightly before immediately charging off for the front lines. The battle continued near the boundary of the divine kingdom of Pingtian. The tough walls had already completely collapsed, forcing the armies on the side of the divine kingdom to form lines of defense to stop the soldiers from the Empyrean demon cult. In this battle, the divine kingdom of Pingtian had used all they had. Not only had all the people from the divine kingdom sent more people from their clans, but even most of the guards had been relocated away from the royal capital. The royal divine army had been mobilized as well. Aside from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, the nearby divine kingdoms had sent large numbers of soldiers as well. They used spatial treasures to move them over from various places. They could only fend off the soldiers from the three armies of the Empyrean demon cult by pouring together the strength of several divine kingdoms. The divine king hovered in the sky as he looked around at the battlefield. He was not very optimistic inside while his brows had remained furrowed the entire time. On the other side, Vice Leader Huayan stood with his arms crossed, hovering there leisurely. He smiled faintly as if victory was already in his grasp. He stared at the sky. Through his unique cultivation method, he could clearly sense invisible energy of souls gather in the sky. All of it was sucked towards the sea of blood at the headquarters. Most of the mission from the Grand Elder has been completed, Huayan thought. He understood very well that the Empyrean demon cult did not attack to invade this time. Rather, they attacked to create endless slaughter so that they could gather the energy of souls. Suddenly, Huayan's eyes narrowed. He stared behind the divine king. With his eyes as a primordial realm expert, he could clearly see a figure shoot over with lightning speed on a sword. It's Jianshen. How is he still alive? Huayan frowned. At the same time, the divine king sensed Jianshen make his way over from behind. He was slightly surprised, and soon afterwards, he seemed to think of something. Understanding filled his face. "Greetings, Your Majesty." Jianshan arrived before the Divine King very soon. He clasped his hands and bowed at the Divine King. "Good, very good. As long as you're fine." The Divine King nodded with a smile. Jianshan's return had cleared up some of the gloom within him. "Jianshan, where's the commander of the 7th Army, Yaxi Lian?" Huaiyan growled. He suddenly experienced an ill omen after seeing Jianshan in perfect condition. Jianshan smiled with deep meaning when he heard Huaiyan mention Yaxi Lian. He said, "Your Majesty, I just happened to have a small gift for you." With that, Jianshan immediately brought out Yaxi Lian, who had been imprisoned in the Bright Moon Divine Hall. Right now, Yaxi Lian's cultivation remained sealed, so she was unable to use her great strength at all. She was like a sitting duck in Jianshan's hands. "Yaxi Lian." Huaiyan's face changed drastically as he cried out. Disbelief had completely filled his face. This was because the outcome was completely different from what he had imagined. It could be described as the exact opposite. Huaiyan moved very soon, flying towards Yaxi Lian as quickly as he could. He wanted to save Yaxi Lian from Jianshan. Primordial realm experts were so fast that Jianshan could not even react. "Huaiyan, if you take another step forward, I'll wipe out her soul," the Divine King's voice rang out. He had already appeared before Jianshan silently with his hand pressed on Yaxi Lian's head. With his strength as a primordial realm expert, he only needed to press down gently, and Yaxi Lian's soul would be wiped out instantly. Even Huaiyan would not be able to save her in time. Huaiyan came to a halt when he heard the Divine King's words. His face had darkened as he glanced extremely sternly at Yaxi Lian, who had the Divine King's hand on her head. The light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. In the end, Huaiyan did not dare to advance any further. However, he did not back off either. He glared at Jianshan and said coldly, "How impressive, Jianshan. I never thought you really did have some ability for even Yaxi Lian to end up in your hands. There's a primordial realm expert behind this brat. If it weren't for her, how would he have been able to escape from me with just his own abilities?" Yaxi Lian snorted coldly. Her face was calm and composed. Even though her life was in the hands of the Divine King, she did not become flustered at all. A primordial realm expert? Huaiyan snorted coldly as his gaze became extremely frigid. He growled, "I really do have to look into this matter carefully and see just which primordial realm expert dares to stand against our Empyrean demon cult. It's nothing even if we lose if it's a battle between primordial realm experts. But our Empyrean demon cult will never drop a matter where a primordial realm expert lowers themselves to deal with a god king. We will pursue the matter to the end." A primordial realm expert? Huaiyan snorted coldly as his gaze became extremely frigid. He growled, "I really do have to look into this matter carefully and see just which primordial realm expert dares to stand against our Empyrean demon cult. It's nothing even if we lose if it's a battle between primordial realm experts. But our Empyrean demon cult will never drop a matter where a primordial realm expert lowers themselves to deal with a god king. We will pursue the matter to the end." Huaiyan stared at the Divine King at this moment and said, "Ping Tian, release Yaxi Lian." The Divine King smiled and said, "Huaiyan, looking at how much you're worrying, Yaxi Lian must be quite important to you." As he said that, the Divine King could not help but press down harder on Yaxi Lian's head. The laws of the primordial realm vaguely condensed as he threatened Huaiyan, "It's not impossible for me to release Yaxi Lian. Your Empyrean demon cult just has to retreat immediately." "Retreat? That's completely impossible," Huaiyan said icily. His gaze was extremely cold, and there was heavy killing intent when he looked at Jianshan in particular. If it were not for the primordial realm expert behind Jianshan capturing Yaxi Lian, why would he, Huaiyan, be forced into negotiating? This was all because of Jianshan. "I can never let this Jianshan go. Even if I ignore how great of a problem he'll become once he matures, just what he has done to Yaxi Lian cannot be forgiven," killing intent filled Huaiyan inside. At this moment, he was even tempted to ignore the Divine King and directly try to kill Jiangchen. However, Yaxi Lian was in the Divine King's hands right now, so he did not dare to act recklessly. Since your Empyrean demon cult won't retreat, I can only lower myself to personally kill the commander of the 7th Army. With that, the strength of your cult will weaken, the Divine King said icily. It was filled with firm killing intent. He was also someone who could kill without hesitation. Since they could not come to terms, he had no need to keep Yaxi Lian alive. Stop. Right when the Divine King was about to kill Yaxi Lian, Huayan suddenly called out. The Divine King remained indifferent. Powerful laws had condensed around his hand on Yaxi Lian's head. Huayan, have you threw it through? The Divine King asked as he glared at Huayan. Ping Tian, I'll be honest. You can't kill Yaxi Lian, because if you do, your divine kingdom of Ping Tian will definitely be annihilated. That's because Yaxi Lian is a direct disciple of one of the 8 elders, the Fox Saint Elder. At the same time, she's the Fox Saint Elder's only disciple. You should be able to guess just how important she is to the Fox Saint Elder, Huayan growled. The Fox Saint Elder? The Divine King frowned. His understanding of the Empyrean demon cult was limited to only the branch on the cloud plane. Clearly, the Fox Saint Elder of the 8 elders had already surpassed the limits of the cloud plane. I never thought she would actually be the direct disciple of the Fox Saint Elder. Ping Tian, we really can't kill this Yaxi Lian because no one is the Fox Saint Elder's opponent in the southern region apart from the Eternal Blood Sun Empire, including us ancient empires. At this moment, an ancient voice suddenly boomed out in the Divine King's head. The Divine King knew who the voice came from. He was a primordial realm ancestor of the imperial family of the Heavenly Moon Empire. He remained with the imperial family. Thanks to his powerful soul, he was able to communicate with him from so far away. The Divine King thought quickly and said to Huayan, so what if she's the direct disciple of the Fox Saint Elder? There will be losses when the 2 armies clash. If the Fox Saint Elder really is bold enough to come, do you think the Blood Sun Empire will just stand by? Getting me to release her for nothing is impossible. Huayan became uneasy. After a very long pause, he said, Ping Tian, getting me to retreat is impossible. However, I can give you 7 days to regroup in exchange for Yaxi Lian. Huayan was out of choices with the current situation. Yaxi Lian's identity was just too special. If something were to happen to her, he would not be able to bear the consequences. 7 days are too short. Give me a month, the Divine King said coldly. 10 days. Huayan also responded coldly. In the end, they agreed to a ceasefire of half a month. Although half a month was very short, the time would allow the side of the Divine Kingdom to greatly regroup, allowing them to deploy even more troops. With the ceasefire, both the battle between the Overgods and the God King stopped at that moment. They all returned to their respective bases. It was just that there were far fewer of them compared to the beginning of the battle. A third of all the Overgods had passed away, while several God Kings had died as well. However, when they saw Jiangchen standing beside the Divine King in perfect condition, many of them became deeply surprised. Brother, this is fantastic. I knew you'd be fine. Sacred Feather arrived before Jiangchen as soon as possible. There was excitement and joy on his face that he struggled to hide. Right now, Sacred Feather was covered in blood. There were many vicious and horrifying wounds on him. Behind him, Houston, Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu all let out a breath in relief when they discovered that Jiangchen had returned safely. They all smiled from the bottom of their hearts. They were also injured to varying degrees. He Yu was the most heavily injured out of all of them. Let's go back first. Without talking too much, Jiangchen vanished into the fortress with them. There was a military base within the fortress, and at the center of it stood several divine halls. Each divine hall represented a major organization. The Divine King had also placed a divine hall here for the Divine Kingdom of Ping Tian as a place where his people could rest. Jiangchen directly took Sacred Feather and the others into the divine hall. They directly made their way to a secret room. After that, he took out the best healing pills out of everything he had purchased from the Xiandao Empire. These are all high-grade pills, so consume them and heal up, Jiangchen said to everyone. They did not hold back, directly devouring the pills to heal their wounds and replenish their origin energy. Brother, Sister Muir has been taken away, said Sacred Feather. He became rather depressed when he mentioned this. What? Muir has been taken away? Jiangchen was surprised. His eyes shone with a shocking light as a powerful presence emanated from his body. What happened? Who took Muir away? It's a sect called the Daoist Sect of Divine Sound. Everyone explained everything that had happened in a few sentences. The Skyfire Plane, the Daoist Sect of Divine Sound, Jiangchen murmured. Instead, he calmed down after learning about this matter. Then, he raised his head and stared at the ceiling of the secret room quietly. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate all, reaching into outer space. He seemed to see the distant Skyfire plane that he had never even heard about. Muir, I will come looking for you. That day won't be too far away, Jiangchen secretly made up his mind. Jiangchen took out a few high-quality saint artifacts and 3 supreme-quality saint artifacts afterwards for everyone to choose from. He had also purchased these saint artifacts from the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. There were saint artifacts for both offense and defense. The Empyrean demon orb can attack and defend. It's enough for me, said Houston. He only took some healing pills. These items don't suit me, said Sacred Feather. In the end, only Roy Jean, Hong Lian, and He He picked out some high-quality saint artifacts to replace the saint artifacts they originally had. As their strength increased, the saint artifacts that they originally possessed basically were not very useful anymore apart from the bead that could block attacks to the soul. Jiangchen, it's rumored that the commander of the 7th Army took you away, but Yashi Lian ended up as your hostage in the end. What's that all about? Houston asked as he healed. It's Fei He who saved me. Fei He has already recovered her strength to the primordial realm now. Jiangchen narrated everything without going into too much detail. All the people gathered there because stunned when they heard that Fei He was already a primordial realm expert. They all felt some disbelief. Back on the Tianyuan continent, Fei He had been reduced to a soul. She was so weak in their eyes, yet now, she had become a primordial realm expert in such a short amount of time. Everyone found the huge change to be a little unbelievable. The primordial realm was a cultivation level that they could only look up to in their eyes. It was insurmountable. I brought quite a few things back from my visit to the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire. They're enough to increase the strength of our entire clan to another level. Once you've mostly recovered, come to the Tianyuan clan with me. I want to reorganize the Tianyuan clan during the half a month of ceasefire so that we can truly toil about without worry on the front lines, said Jiangchen. He thought back to how some unknown people had slaughtered members of the Tianyuan clan back when they were gathering materials for the teleportation formations. Before they found out who was behind it all, before they completely eliminated this potential problem, danger would always engulf the Tianyuan clan. As a result, Jiangchen was always worried as the patriarch. He was afraid that something would happen in the clan when he was not present. The divine kingdom of Pingtian was not peaceful at all during the ceasefire. The Divine King had personally decreed to mobilize all the soldiers in the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian, moving them all to the front line. At the same time, he began recruiting many soldiers in the Divine Kingdom as well. Moreover, the Divine King communicated with the primordial realm experts of the Heavenly Moon Empire through his soul, asking for even more reinforcements because the Divine Kingdom was unable to stop the armies of the Empyrean demon cult by themselves. At the same time, the Divine Kings from the neighboring Divine Kingdoms answered the Divine King's call for reinforcements. They sent even more soldiers to the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. The walls at the front lines were being rebuilt as well. Several God Kings worked together, reconstructing the long wall such that it reached the toughness of defensive saint artifacts. The Empyrean demon cult also replenished their soldiers in an orderly manner. Although people had died during the war in the army of 300,000, the Empyrean demon cult had far more soldiers than just the 9 armies. Behind the 9 armies was a reserve army. Once the 9 armies lost soldiers, the reserves would immediately replace them. However, for some reason, the 9 armies of the Empyrean demon cult always remained as 100,000 people. It would never surpass that. A few days later, Rui Jin and the others mostly recovered from their wounds. Jianshan immediately returned to the Dong'an province with them. The ancestors of the powerful clans in the Dong'an province came along as well, returning to the Dong'an province with Jianshan. However, aside from Jianshan's group, only 2 ancestors remained from the powerful clans. Jianshan looked at the 2 last ancestors on the flying vehicle and sighed to himself secretly. He controlled the path of the flying vehicle quietly, directing it towards the Dong'an province. It was rumored that the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan, who was supposed to be captured by the commander of the 7th army of the Empyrean demon cult, Yashi Lian, had suddenly returned. News of this spread across the entire province as soon as possible. As soon as the flying vehicle approached the provincial city, the city gates were already filled with people. Many people gathered there to welcome them back warmly. The patriarch of the Tianyuan clan is a supreme overgod who can make onto the overgod's plaque. Even with the entire saints' world in perspective, these supreme overgods are famed. I never thought I'd be able to stand so close to a supreme overgod. He's a figure of legends. It's said that supreme overgods can kill god kings. This commander of the 7th army sure is unlucky to come across a supreme overgod. Right? I heard that the commander of the 7th army was captured by the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan. Don't underestimate him just because he's still an overgod. Even capturing a god king is nothing difficult for him. There were many praises for Jianshan among the warm welcome. Many people could not help but feel a deep sense of pride when the patriarch of the Tianyuan clan was mentioned. The flying vehicle directly entered the Tianyuan clan. All the elders in the clan had already been waiting for quite some time. When they saw Jianshan and the others return safely, their faces all became filled with evident excitement and delight. Jianshan leapt off the flying vehicle. Just when he wanted to say something, a light suddenly flickered through his eyes, and he stared at the residence that belonged to him sharply. There's someone inside. Jianshan's heart shivered. He could clearly sense that something was moving around in his room, but he was unable to tell who it was through the senses of his soul. This person's strength completely exceeds mine. I can't sense them at all. Jianshan's heart sank slightly. He felt slightly worried as he directly made his way to his residence. Sacred Feather, Houston, and so on could sense the change with Jianshan. They looked at each other and followed behind him. Jianshan directly pushed through the door and entered his residence. He knew that before an expert that even the senses of his soul were unable to detect, all his movements were under their control. Anything he did would not be able to escape their senses. As a result, he just did not make any preparations. He just waltzed in without trying to hide it at all. I wonder which expert has suddenly paid a visit to my Tianyuan clan. From Mo Ling, Ando Fu, and the others' lack of response, they clearly don't know about the arrival of this uninvited guest, Jianshan thought. He was troubled. However, after he walked in, he saw a white-clothed woman sitting at a table idly, eating the fruit there. He could not help but become surprised. "Fairy, how you?" Jianshan cried out subconsciously. Surprise had filled his face. Fairy How You sat there as she wished, biting into the fruit that was originally supposed to be for Jianshan. She looked at Jianshan as if she was smiling and said, "You're so careful even in your own clan. It looks like the famous patriarch of the Tianyuan clan doesn't have a particularly liberating life." Jianshan let out a sigh of relief. He ignored Fairy How Yu's snide comments and said, "Fairy How You, you've suddenly appeared in the southern region. It looks like you've completed the matters for the Xiandao Empire." Fairy How You stood up. With a wave of her hand, the door to the building immediately closed, locking Sacred Feather and the others who had followed Jianshan along outside. She described it like it was nothing. "This matter is something difficult for the Xiandao Empire to resolve, but it's a piece of cake for me. I've come to take a look at your situation here and also to bid farewell to you." Fairy How You continued, before I go, is there anything you can't deal with? Just tell me, such as that Earth Spirit Sect or something. Fairy How You had spoken seriously. The Earth Spirit Sect stood on the same side as Jiangchen, yet they had launched a sneak attack against Jiangchen without paying attention to the bigger picture. As such, she felt that everything should not just end there. She wanted to properly punish the Earth Spirit Sect. Fairy How You had spoken seriously. The Earth Spirit Sect stood on the same side as Jiangchen, yet they had launched a sneak attack against Jiangchen without paying attention to the bigger picture. As such, she felt that everything should not just end there. She wanted to properly punish the Earth Spirit Sect. However, Jiangchen shook his head instead, turning down Fairy How Yu's kind intentions. Although he knew that it would be far easier to obtain an explanation when he visited the Earth Spirit Sect if Fairy How You took part, he felt like he had already owed her enough. He had helped her a lot in the past as well, but what Fairy How You had done in the past few years were more than enough to make up for it. Moreover, he did not want other people to deal with his problems whenever he encountered them. It would make him become reliant on others if it kept happening. That would not benefit him at all. You and your stubborn head really won't budge, huh? I want to help you out, but you turn me down. Think about just how great of a price the Xiandao Empire has paid for me to do something for them. Do you think the Earth Spirit Sect will take you seriously as a mere overgod? If it weren't for the fact that a primordial realm expert has appeared in the divine kingdom of Pingtian, making them want to avoid any trouble with him, how much longer do you think you can live? With your talent and the fact that you've fallen out with the Earth Spirit Sect, they'll never let you mature successfully. Do you plan on relying on the Divine King to help you? Before I came here, I did some investigation. The ancestor of the Earth Spirit Sect has already stepped into the primordial realm for several 100,000 years. He's not someone that the Divine King who has only recently broken through to the primordial realm can stop. Fairy How You stared at Jiangchen as she said all that in a single breath. She seemed rather exasperated and frustrated. Thank you for your concern, Fairy How You. I appreciate it. Jiangchen clasped his fist at Fairy How You. Why, you're driving me crazy. Whatever. Since you want to deal with it yourself, then deal with it yourself. Your life has nothing to do with me, Fairy How You said in annoyance. Her chest heaved slightly, and she was clearly quite frustrated. Then, Fairy How You, please rest here for a while. I've just returned to the clan, so I still have some matters I have to deal with. I must bid farewell to you for now. Jiangchen smiled brightly and left the room, leaving Fairy How You fuming in there. Afterwards, Jiangchen gathered all the elders of the Tian Yuan clan. He split up the things he had purchased from the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire and set up an arsenal there. He left behind various pills, cultivation methods, battle skills, and saint artifacts. Once the people in the clan reached a certain cultivation level and made a certain amount of contribution to the clan, they could enter the arsenal to pick something. The minimum requirement for the 3 supreme quality saint artifacts was over God, so no one could use it. As a result, Jiangchen did not leave a single one of them in there. To Jiangchen's pity, none of the 3 supreme quality saint artifacts were suitable for him. He had basically searched through all the stores in the imperial capital of the Xiandao Empire, but he failed to find a supreme quality saint artifact that suited him. As a result, he still used the startling rainbow sword. After organizing all that, Jiangchen took out 2 sets of formation banners from his space ring. He began setting them up around the Tian Yuan clan. One set could attack, while the other could defend. Jiangchen had paid an extraordinary amount of divine crystals to purchase the 2 God King level formations in the imperial capital. With the protection of these 2 barriers, he would be truly without worries for the clan as long as God Kings did not come. It would be able to stop all opponents below God King without any trouble at all. A day later, God King level formations enveloped the entire clan, giving off powerful pulses of energy. Jiangchen stood in the clan as he stared at the 2 sets of formations that were already in operation. Finally, he revealed a somewhat victorious smile. He really could stop worrying about the Tian Yuan clan now. I really don't have to worry either with these 2 formations, Jian uttered quietly as he appeared before Jianchen. He also stared at the formations. Afterwards, he looked at Jianchen and said sternly, Jianchen, there's not much time left for me here. I will be leaving soon. You're leaving? Jianchen stared at Jian and asked in surprise. Jian nodded. When I broke through to Overgod, I could vaguely sense a calling from the depths of outer space. Afterwards, as my strength increased, this calling became more and more powerful. It was just that you needed my help at that time, so I stayed behind. Now that these two God King level formations are protecting the Tian Yuan clan, there's no more point in me staying. It's time for me to go. Jianchen fell silently. Ever since he had come to the saint's world, he had been with Jian. They had been together from the puny deities they were in the very beginning to the current overgods that ruled over an entire region. Now that Jian had to leave all of a sudden, Jianchen felt rather unwilling to part with him. What they had gone through in those years had already forged a deep friendship between the two of them. They were like close brothers. Once they separated, it would definitely be a long time before they met again. They had no idea when that would happen. As a matter of fact, they did not even know whether they would be able to meet each other again or not in the saint's world that was filled with danger. When do you plan on leaving? Jianchen asked with a rather heavy heart. I plan on leaving after this war. Jian stared deeply at the sky and said indifferently. In the blink of an eye, over half of the period of ceasefire had passed. The next morning, Fei He called Jianchen over. She directly cut to the chase after seeing Jianchen. I plan on visiting the branch of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. Are you coming along? Jianchen was surprised when he heard that. He said, that's the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain. That's basically the belly of the beast. It'll be extremely dangerous. What are you going there for? It's just a branch. Even if it's the belly of the beast, that only applies to regular infinite primes. Fei He continued, the Empyrean demon cult has divided itself into three and is attacking three different regions at the same time. Their actions can't be as simple as just taking over territory. I think there must be some other secret hidden behind these wars. As a result, I plan on investigating it to see what they're doing. You'll offend the Empyrean demon cult by doing that, Jianchen said with some worry. Even Tian Shuang hoped that Hao Yu would not become involved with the matters of the Empyrean demon cult. Naturally, he wished that Fei He would not offend the Empyrean demon cult either. The Empyrean demon cult was an extremely powerful organization. It was enough to make all the organizations that stood at the peak of the Cloud Plain feel fear. Any accidents would even lead to trouble for the Moon God Hall. Fei He rolled her eyes. Since when did you become so fearful? The Empyrean demon cult is indeed powerful, but I'm not afraid of them. Moreover, I'm just going in to have a look so that I can understand what they're doing. It's not like I'm destroying their entire branch. And right now, their three vice leaders just happen to be out. It's a perfect time to infiltrate their headquarters now that it's empty. Jianchen hesitated for a while before making up his mind. All right, I'll come with you to have a look then. I want to see just what hidden secret there is for their wars against everyone. Infiltrating the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the Cloud Plain was definitely a bold and risky move. This was because no one from the 6 ancient empires of the southern region possessed that ability. However, the Blood Sun Empire feared the Empyrean demon cult, so even if they had supreme experts, they would not do something like that. Only Fei He possessed both the strength and courage to target the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult directly. The headquarters must be covered with formations. I can get through them, but it'll be quite difficult to do so all by myself while not creating any disturbances. As a result, I need you to find 3 other people to come along aside from you. I'll teach the 4 of you the moonlight illumination formation so that you can assist me, added Fei He. Jianchen became rather hesitant after he heard Fei He's words towards the end. He said while lacking in confidence, but the people I can find right now are only overgods at best. The formations at the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult must be extremely powerful. Can it work with our strength? Jianghu became rather hesitant after he heard Fei He's words towards the end. He said while lacking in confidence, but the people I can find right now are only overgods at best. The formations at the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult must be extremely powerful. Can it work with our strength? I don't need you to break through the formations. I only need the four of you to create the moonlight illumination formation to cover the disturbance I make, said Fei He. Jianghu pondered over the matter seriously and said, all right, I'll go contact them right now. Jianghu left soon afterwards. He called in Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Houston, sternly telling them the situation in detail. What? Fei He wants to infiltrate the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Houston were all shocked. They became extremely stern. That's right. Fei He should possess the ability to do so. However, she needs our help to not alert anyone when she breaks through the formations. Are you coming? Jianghu asked seriously. Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather said nothing. What Fei He wanted to do stunned them. In their eyes, she was simply too bold. Shenzhen said after a while of thought, with the current situation, it's impossible for our war against the Empyrean demon cult to end quickly. If the war continues, it'll be extremely bad for everyone. Even we ourselves may die if it is prolonged. If we can enter the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult and tamper with some things through Fei He, we might be able to end the war sooner. Jianghu, when do we move? Houston asked. Clearly, he had made up his mind. In the end, Sacred Feather expressed his thoughts as well. He had basically grown up with Jianghu, going wherever Jianghu went. Even if he knew that certain death awaited him, he would not hesitate at all. Before we go to the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, we need to learn the moonlight illumination formation, said Jianghu. Afterwards, Jianghu, Sacred Feather, Houston, and so on told everyone that they would be in seclusion to heal and that no one was to disturb them. They also activated the God King level formations to envelope the entire clan before leaving the Dong'an province with Fei He silently. In an ancient mountain range extremely distant from the divine kingdom of Pingtian, there was an extremely well-hidden gorge. It was several thousand meters deep, and a thick layer of vegetation covered its entrance. It was very difficult to discover its existence from the outside. The gorge was triangular in shape, where it was narrow at the top and wide at the bottom. The entrance was only around a dozen meters across, while the bottom of the gorge was several thousand meters wide. At this moment, gentle moonlight illuminated the depths of the gorge that were supposed to be pure black. Powerful pulses of energy emanated outwards, forming a tremendous pressure that crushed all the plants at the bottom of the gorge to pieces. It had been 3 days already. Jianghu, Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather currently stood in a special position, creating a formation. A white light completely composed from moonlight force covered a range of several thousand meters from them. The four of them bathed in the gentle moonlight as it glistened. However, at a closer glance, it was quite obvious that this moonlight force did not originate from their own powers. Instead, it all originated from a crystal in their hands. The four of them controlled the moonlight force in the crystal to create the moonlight illumination formation together. Fei He hovered in the air. She stared at the formation from the four of them nearby and said, "There are basically no problems left with the moonlight illumination formation. The formation cannot defend or attack at all, but it can reduce all the disturbances from anything that happens within it to nothing. As long as it doesn't exceed the limits of the formation, even the 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult won't be able to sense what happens in the formation. With the assistance of this moonlight illumination formation, I have complete confidence that we can infiltrate the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult without alerting anyone. Let's go then. It's time for us to set off." Afterwards, the 5 of them left the hidden gorge and directly headed towards the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult on the cloud plain. There was a region of extremely desolate plains in the southern region of the cloud plain. The sky was filled with endless darkness, where sunlight never reached, while the ground of the entire region was crimson. It was all dark red as if it had been watered with blood. The place seemed to be in eternal darkness. In the depths of the desolate and deathly silent land stood a majestic castle. The castle was extremely large and completely dark red, as if it had been covered by blood. Even without getting too close to it, a heavy, metallic smell of blood would seem to be present. The smell of death filled the surroundings. Coupled with the chilling winds that shrieked like ghosts, the castle in the darkness seemed even gloomier. It would make people shiver. Originally, there was no wind in the surroundings of the castle. It would be terrifyingly silent. However, with the war that had occurred recently, wind appeared in its surroundings. If someone possessed extremely sharp senses, they would even be able to sense the chilling winds constantly revolve around the top of the castle. It formed an invisible swirl there. It was as if something there was sucking in the shrieking winds. This castle was the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult branch on the Cloud Plain. The headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult was a forbidden region for the experts of the Cloud Plain. Even infinite primes would not approach it so easily. However, a faint figure flickered through this world of darkness at this moment. She seemed to have fused with the surrounding space, where even god kings would not be able to detect her existence. With a single flash, she had already approached the castle silently. As the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, its security was especially tight. Layers of formation hidden in space engulfed both the interior and the exterior of the castle. There were even formations at the level of primordial realm experts among them. However, the formations only acted like furnishing to the person fused with space. They were unable to do anything at all. In the end, the figure approached the castle easily. A large group of soldiers were currently gathered under the lead of a god king outside the castle. At this moment, the gates of the castle suddenly swung open. A white-robed man strode out with his arms crossed. His pale face possessed some femininity, making him pretty like a woman. His appearance was enough to make people steal a few extra glances helplessly. "Greetings, Protector Tseng." The god king in front of the army saw the white-clothed man and immediately bowed. The man nodded and said coldly, "Vice Leader Huaiyan has orders for you to set off immediately. Remember, you must complete the Vice Leader's mission cleanly. Leave the Divine Kings to the Protectors from the Hall of Protectors." "Yes, sir." Protector Tseng did not discover that just when he opened the gates of the castle and walked out, a faint flash had drifted past him just a few meters away, vanishing into the castle. In an extremely quiet, hidden place within the gloomy castle, the white-clothed Fei He slowly revealed herself from the surrounding space. She stared ahead and could not help but frown. She murmured, "The formations in the castle are indeed much more powerful than the ones outside. They're on two completely different levels. In here should be the place where the Empyrean demon cult is truly trying to protect. The formations outside were probably only set down by the vice leaders casually. I need to rely on their moonlight illumination formation to pass through these formations without alerting anyone." As she said that, the bright moon divine hall that had shrunken to the size of a palm sat in her hands silently. With a thought, several streaks of white light immediately came out from the divine hall, turning into 4 figures. They were Jianchen, Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather. "We're already inside the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. Follow me closely and don't make any sounds, so we don't get exposed," Fei He warned the people behind her. All 4 of them nodded sternly. They understood that they had truly entered the belly of the beast now. Danger was all around them. I already sensed it outside that the true secret should be hidden on the top floor. Right now, formations protect the entrance to the next floor. Use the moonlight illumination formation. I'll get through these formations, Fei He said to the 4 people behind her secretly. Jianchen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shenzhen looked at one another and immediately got into action. Jianchen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shenzhen looked at one another and immediately got into action. From the previous practice, they had already developed a tacit understanding, so when they cast the moonlight illumination formation, they were able to do it without much effort at all. They were extremely well versed at it. Very soon, the 4 of them cast down the moonlight illumination formation perfectly. Pure, glistening moonlight force surrounded their bodies. A barrier completely condensed from moonlight force appeared around them, covering a range of several hundred meters. Even though the formation was completed, there was not the slightest pulse of energy apart from the light that shone as brightly as the moon. As a result, the moonlight illumination formation could only be discovered through sight. It was impossible to find it at all through the other senses, including the senses of the soul. The moonlight illumination formation could not attack or defend. Its only usage was to cover up everything within the formation. Of course, the premise was that it did not surpass the formation's limits. Fei He no longer hesitated either when she saw that the moonlight illumination formation was complete. She immediately began to smash through the formations. She was slightly stern. Primordial realm laws descended on her, and all her movements possessed devastating power. However, since it was purposefully suppressed, this primordial realm power did not erupt. She concealed it perfectly. Fei He got through the formation extremely quickly. In under a minute, there was a hiss, and a hole gradually appeared in the formation that blocked the path to the next floor. It revealed a dark passage. Chilling winds whistled through the passage, and it was filled with a demonic aura. A demonic aura that was especially pure and dense flowed out from the passage. To avoid attracting attention, I've only created a temporary entrance through this formation. It will close up by itself very soon, so come on in, Fei He said to Jian Chen and the others. With a wave of her hand, moonlight force appeared, and all the demonic aura in the passage was instantaneously dispersed. With a flash, she entered the passageway that led to the next floor. The four of them immediately removed the formation and disappeared into the passage with a flash. Soon after the four of them had entered, the hole in the formation completely closed up, returning to its previous state. The headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult only seemed like a huge castle from the outside. Inside, it was so large that it seemed to be composed of miniature worlds. The space on each floor had completely surpassed the castle's size. In particular, the halls, secret rooms, and so on all seemed to possess worlds of their own. The castle was filled with formations. Every single one of them was extremely powerful, either set up openly or hidden in space. Just the pulses of energy they gave off were enough to make the four of them to shiver. With their strength, they did not even dare to expand the senses of their souls because they were afraid that they would not be able to sense a god king hidden somewhere and hence expose themselves. As a result, the four of them could only follow behind Fei He. Along the way, the four of them avoided all the dangerous regions and the patrol of god kings under Fei He's lead. They advanced through the headquarters silently, without raising any attention at all. It had to be mentioned that the security of the headquarters was extremely tight. Ordinary infinite primes would face life-threatening danger if they infiltrated here. However, Fei He was no ordinary infinite prime. There was no fear or danger under her lead. As they traveled deeper in, they gradually approached the core region of the headquarters while Fei He's face had gradually become stern as well. This should be the entrance to the next floor, but there's an extremely powerful formation hidden here. Fei He stopped at the end of a hallway. She stared ahead as a sliver of seriousness appeared on her face. There is a trapping and killing formation, coupled with an illusionary formation in there. The formation is so powerful that even 7th heavenly layer infinite primes will probably be done for if they get caught in there. It looks like the area above should be the most important part of the headquarters. Maybe the real reason why the Empyrean demon cult is waging so many wars is in there, Fei He said sternly. After studying the formation for a while, she said confidently, however, this formation still can't stop us. It's just that getting through the formation might create a disturbance so great that the moonlight illumination formation can't cover it. Fall into formation. A while later, Fei He made up her mind. Please wait, Fei He. Houston said all of a sudden. He seemed uneasy. Fei He turned around to look at Houston. Jian Chen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather all looked at him as well. What's wrong, Uncle Shou? Jian Chen asked in confusion. Houston stared at the formation up ahead. After a moment of silence, he said, maybe this isn't the right path. Jian Chen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather immediately became surprised. They looked at Houston doubtfully. Even Fei He stared at Houston in surprise. She asked, "How do you know that it's not the right path?" "Because of this." With a thought, a thumb-sized orb gradually floated out from his forehead. The orb was completely blood-red, as if it had been condensed from blood. It was demonic and seemed slightly sinister. It was the Empyrean demon orb Jian Chen had originally given to Houston. Fei He studied the Empyrean demon orb for a while and said, "This is a demonic god artifact of quite a high quality. It looks like you've gained the artifact spirit's recognition since you are able to use this god artifact with your current strength." Houston nodded. He had learned about the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb long ago. He said, "The artifact spirit just told me to take another path." After a moment of thought, Fei He said, "Then lead the way." The 5 of them changed their path. Houston was responsible for leading them afterwards, allowing them to directly travel towards where the Empyrean demon orb told him to go. Before long, the 5 of them stopped. It was not because they did not want it to stop, but that they had reached a dead end. They had run out of places to go. "There's no formation here. It's a dead end." Fei He furrowed her brows after studying the surroundings. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to shine with a dazzling red light that surrounded all of them. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather's eyes. The sudden movement from the Empyrean demon cult had filled them with cautiousness. Even a sliver of surprise had appeared on Houston's face because he was not responsible for this. Instead, it was the Empyrean demon orb's own response. This was somewhat beyond Houston's control. Only Fei He remained composed, where her face did not change at all. This was the confidence that came from her great strength. However, in the next moment, all their eyes narrowed, including even Fei He's. They all stared ahead in surprise. Under the red light from the Empyrean demon orb, the scene before them changed. The stone wall that originally stood before them had actually vanished, turning into long, narrow, and winding passage. It was dark red in there, and it gave off a gloomy presence. What a great formation. I actually completely failed to sense it, Fei He frowned. She stared at the winding passageway and murmured. The light in her eyes flickered. She looked at the Empyrean demon orb in thought and doubt. This should be the correct path. Houston stared ahead. After studying it for a while, he called everyone. They advanced under the red glow of the Empyrean demon orb. Along the way, all of them remained within the Empyrean demon orb's range. They discovered that they could only pass through the illusionary formation that even Fei He had failed to sense if they remained in there. Once they left its range, a dead end would appear once again. The stone wall that blocked their path seemed completely real, where it felt stiff and heavy if touched. When they passed through the illusionary formation with the Empyrean demon orb, it was like they were leaving their original world and traversing to a completely different place. However, at this moment, the Empyrean demon orb began to tremble heavily. Its red light began to flicker as well. Swish! Suddenly, the Empyrean demon orb turned into a red streak of light, completely breaking free from Houston's control. It shot off into the distance all by itself. "Oh no, I can't control the Empyrean demon orb." Houston's face changed. They were in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, so danger lurked around every corner. If they created too great of a disturbance, they would be exposed. "Chase it!" Jian Chen called out, and they immediately pursued the Empyrean demon orb. After all, the Empyrean demon orb was a god artifact and one with an artifact spirit. It was impossible for Jian Chen and the other overgods to chase up to it with its speed. In just a short while, they grew further and further away from the orb. If it were not for the vague connection between Houston and the Empyrean demon orb, they probably would have lost track of it completely. "Don't resist, I'll take you with me." At this moment, Fei He's voice rang out. With that, gentle moonlight force revolved around the 4 of them. After that, their speed suddenly exploded, and they pursued the Empyrean demon orb at an extremely terrifying pace. They moved so quickly that Jian Chen and the others were not even able to see their surroundings properly. As a streak of red light, the Empyrean demon orb quickly flew through the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult. However, as it was a god artifact, it was unable to move around the headquarters as silently as Fei He. As a result, it gave off pulses of energy and the presence of a god artifact as it flew. Naturally, many people discovered it. Who is it? Quite a few shouts rang out in different places within the headquarters. At the same time, powerful senses of the soul swept out from all directions, directly locking onto the flying Empyrean demon orb. It's a god artifact. Whose god artifact is it? Why have I never seen it before? It doesn't belong to our Empyrean demon cult. Oh no, someone has infiltrated the headquarters. Immediately, people flickered in the surroundings. God kings either emerged from secret rooms or space covered by formations. They hurried over from all directions as they pursued the Empyrean demon orb. The headquarters have been infiltrated. Quick, contact the vice leaders. An elder god king hovered in the air. His eyes shone brightly. He locked onto the Empyrean demon orb with the senses of his soul as his voice rang through the entire space. However, the castle was covered in formations inside and there were several spaces. The region where Jian Chen and the others had entered with the help of the Empyrean demon orb clearly belonged to another space within the castle. As a result, the elderly god king's voice only rang through there and not the entire castle. However, even with that being the case, the elderly god king managed to alert all the god kings around. But at this moment, the white-clothed Fei He appeared silently behind the elderly god king. She placed her slender, white hand onto the god king's head and pressed down gently. With a bang, the god king's head exploded loudly. His soul was directly wiped out. He was a mighty god king, yet he had just died like this. He could not put up any resistance at all. He did not even know who has killed him before he died. Fei He hovered in the air. Moonlight force revolved around her. She stared at the surroundings coldly and formed a seal with both hands. A circular palm-sized moon hovered from her hands. The energy it possessed was so terrifying that it was enough to devastate the surroundings. It made Jian Chen and the others pale in shock. In the next moment, the moon suddenly shattered, turning into several dozen finger-sized strands of moonlight force. Like arrows, they shot into the surroundings with frightening might. Spurt. 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 In that space, the moonlight force struck all the god kings that had revealed themselves without any exceptions. Before they could even cry out, their souls were shattered and dispersed. At that moment, the entire space fell quiet. Jian Chen, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shen Jian stood behind Fei He. After personally witnessing Fei He killing so many god kings with ease, they all felt deeply shocked. Even though they knew primordial realm experts were very powerful, they could not help but feel astonished when they personally witnessed the might of one. These god kings were not weak. Any single one of them would be far more than what the four of them could handle. They would not even be able to escape. However, they were so weak before Fei He. God kings were truly like ants. We have already been exposed. The three vice leaders should return very soon, Fei He said gently. Originally, she was confident about infiltrating the headquarters completely silently, without raising any attention. However, the Empyrean demon cult had foiled all of this. However, Fei He did not bicker over the matter. She hurried off with Jian Chen and the others, directly chasing after the Empyrean demon orb. When Fei He caught up to the Empyrean demon orb, the orb had arrived beside an extremely huge pool of blood. The pool of blood really was tremendous. It was like an ocean, stretching as far as the eye could see. Huge waves would churn in the sea of blood, striking the space as waves stretched several hundred meters tall, creating great booms. Chilling winds blew in the sky above the sea of blood. It formed an extremely great swirl. Vaguely, countless faces seemed to appear and wail out. This seemed like living hell. It was terrifying and horrifying. Jianchen, Shenzhen, Houston, and Sacred Feather stood at the edge of the pool of blood. They gazed at the boundless ocean, and they were all very stern. This should be the greatest secret of the Empyrean demon cult. They're waging wars to create this. Fei He stared at the churning sea of blood. Afterwards, she stared at the whistling winds in the sky, and after a moment of thought, she murmured, "They've created an ocean from blood and condensed 9 blood beads through a formation by absorbing the energy essence from the blood. They've also gathered all the energy from the souls of the death, extracting their essence to refine 9 soul beads through these formations." What is the Empyrean demon cult trying to do? What blood beads and soul beads? Jianchen asked. He also studied everything before him, but he found nothing aside from the sea of blood and the chilling winds. There are 9 blood beads that possess great energy at the depths of the sea of blood, while the chilling winds in the air are not actually wind. It's the energy of souls drawn over by formations, and there are also 9 soul beads in the energy of souls. You can't see these things yet with your strength, said Fei He. Jianchen said grimly, has the Empyrean demon cult been waging wars to collect blood and energy of souls to condense these blood beads and soul beads? Why would they do that? Fei He shook her head, I'm not certain about this. The essence of energy in the blood beads can allow the cultivation of a person to skyrocket, while the energy of souls in the soul beads can power up a person's soul. However, they're all condensed from low-level cultivators in the end, so the effects are almost non-existent to high-level cultivators. There's no need for the Empyrean demon cult to go to such lengths for all of this with their current strength. Fei He looked at the surroundings of the pool of blood, and she became stern. She said grimly, moreover, there's an extremely powerful formation that protects the pool of blood. It's so powerful that it frightens even me. If a person falls into the formation, they're done for even if they're a chaotic prime. It looks like this pool of blood is much more important than anything else in the Cloud Plane branch of the Empyrean demon cult from how powerful the formation is. I really don't think there's anyone else with the ability to cast down such a terrifying killing formation in the Empyrean demon cult apart from their legendary Great Elder. Jianchen's face changed slightly when he heard Fei He mention the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. He stared at the pool of blood and said grimly, did the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult personally create this place? The Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult was an existence that even the peak clans of the Cloud Plane feared. If it were not for his deterrence, it would be impossible for just the 3 infinite prime vice leaders of the Cloud Plane branch to create such a great disturbance. As a result, as soon as he heard that the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult personally created this place, Jianchen struggled to keep his composure. At this moment, the boundless sea suddenly became even more turbulent. Even the chilling winds formed from the tremendous energy of souls grew stronger. The light in Fei He's eyes flickered. She stared at the sea of blood ahead and said, the Empyrean demon cult is currently massacring lives. They're using all those lives to condense the 9 blood and soul beads so that the 9 blood and soul beads can constantly absorb the essence from the sea of blood and the energy of souls to reach higher qualities. If these blood and soul beads aren't removed, the massacre of the Empyrean demon cult will not stop. They will continue until the beads reach a state that they are satisfied with. Fei He, can we remove these 9 blood and soul beads so that the Empyrean demon cult won't continue like this? Jianchen asked. Fei He shook her head powerlessly. She sighed gently, the formation that protects this place is too powerful. I am powerless before it. At this moment, the Empyrean demon orb that originally floated there without moving suddenly arrived above Houston. A blood-red light fell from the orb, completely surrounding Houston. Houston had already established a vague connection with the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb. When the light covered him, a thought from the artifact spirit entered his head at the same time. Houston's face froze before becoming surprised. He raised his head and stared at the Empyrean demon orb with some astonishment. After a moment of hesitation, he said to everyone, the artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb has told me that I can directly ignore the obstructions of the formation and enter the place. Fairy Hao Yu's eyes narrowed. Suddenly, she turned towards Houston, or more accurately, the Empyrean demon orb above Houston. After staring at it for a while, she said to Houston, "You must know that the formation is so powerful that even chaotic primes may die. If you really do enter the formation as the artifact spirit has said, even I won't be able to save you once your life is in danger. Uncle Xiao, you must not risk it." Jianghu voiced his objection. He deeply understood just how terrifying the great elder of the Empyrean demon cult was. He also did not believe a god artifact would be able to cross through a formation cast down by an expert that powerful. That was unless the Empyrean demon orb possessed great origins, making it almost heaven-defying like the Inata Tower. However, he had heard that the Empyrean demon orb was just the famed treasure of the greatest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean demon monarch. Although it was a god artifact, it was still quite far off from the apex. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather both tried to stop Houston as well. They did not want Houston to take this risk, where he would have to leave his life to the hands of an artifact spirit that could easily run off by itself. Suddenly, powerful pulses of energy appeared from behind them. All the spaces in the headquarters gently trembled at that moment, giving off tremendous pressures. All the formations in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult had been activated at that moment. Countless formations interlinked with one another, forming an extremely tremendous killing formation in the end. The killing formation surrounded the entire castle. The 3 vice leaders of the Empyrean demon cult have returned. They've activated all the formations. Fairy Hao Yu stared backwards and said with composure. Jianghu, Sacred Feather, Houston, and Shenzhen were unable to remain as cool as Fairy Hao Yu. Their hearts all sank, and their faces became extremely stern. "There's no time. Let me try to see whether I can get through the setup here," Houston said firmly. He ignored everyone's attempts at persuading him. With determination, he entered the formation without looking back. Aside from the fact that he wanted to ruin the Empyrean demon cult's plans of creating the blood and soul beads, there was another factor to his actions, and that was the artifact spirit. Houston understood that there was something extremely important to the artifact spirit here through communicating with the artifact spirit. At the same time, there was a huge fortune for himself. With the Empyrean demon orb over his head, Houston used the Empyrean demon arts. Demonic aura wrapped around him, and he had already entered the terrifying killing formation that protected the pool of blood. As soon as he set foot in the killing formation, terrifying killing intent permeated the surroundings. Just the killing intent had almost torn Houston into shreds. If it were not for his Empyrean demon arts and the Empyrean demon orb above his head, he would probably fail to even endure the killing intent. Jiangchen, Shenzhen, and Sacred Feather all stood outside the formation as they stared at Houston nervously. However, they could not help but let out a sigh of relief when they saw how the killing formation did not attack Houston as he advanced through it with great difficulty. At the same time, the 3 of them felt extremely doubtful. Why was such a powerful killing formation rendered useless before Houston? Fairy Hao Yu stared at the Empyrean demon orb above Houston's head without blinking at all. Surprise filled her face. She understood just how terrifying the killing formation was more than anyone. It was enough to kill chaotic primes, yet Houston, who was just an over-god, was actually able to move through it as he wished by relying on a god artifact. This shocked her greatly. The Empyrean demon orb, the Empyrean demon cult, the Empyrean demon orb, the Empyrean demon cult, Fairy Hao Yu murmured as the light in her eyes flickered. As Houston advanced through the killing formation with great difficulty, he was like a dead leaf in the wind, swaying from side to side. Even though the killing formation did not activate, the invisible killing intent that filled it was still difficult for him to endure. He basically needed to use all the strength that his body could provide to take each step. As a result, he advanced at an extremely slow rate. At this moment, 3 figures shrouded in demonic auras gathered together within the headquarters. "We've searched through the entire headquarters, but we've failed to find any intruders. At the same time, we activated the formation as soon as possible, so it's impossible for them to escape here without us sensing it. Where are they hiding?" One of them growled. If Jiangchen was present, he would directly recognize this voice as Huaiyan's. Then maybe the intruders have gone to the forbidden grounds, said Yi Huaiyue, who was wrapped up in a demonic aura. Her voice was slightly weak. After she finished speaking, there was a fit of coughing. Clearly, she was injured. The forbidden grounds? Impossible. Huaiyan and the other vice leader cried out after they heard Yi Huaiyue's words. The demonic aura around them began to churn violently as well. If their faces were visible, it would be quite evident that as soon as they thought that the intruders might have entered the forbidden grounds, their faces had paled. Soon, the three of them moved, flying as quickly as they could towards the forbidden grounds. Even though they did not believe the intruders would be able to find the hidden forbidden grounds, even though they knew the Great Elder had personally cast down supreme formations there, they still did not dare to be careless. They would rather believe it than dismiss it. This was because they deeply understood just how important the forbidden grounds were. Once anything happened to the forbidden grounds, the Great Elder would never spare them. Jianchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather were all relieved as they stood by the pool of blood. Houston had already passed through the killing formation successfully, arriving above the pool of blood safely despite the fright. Afterwards, he directly dove into the sea of blood below under the protection of the Empyrean demon orb, disappearing from the vision of Jianchen and the others. On the other hand, Fei He raised an eyebrow. She looked behind and said, "The three vice leaders are currently hurrying over. Stay here and don't come out. I'll go stop the three of them. Remember, if you don't want trouble, you can't reveal yourselves before them." With that, Fei He van at the same time, primordial realm laws permeated the side of the pool, completely erasing their presences. Jianchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather hid their presences with their full strengths as well. They did their best to hide themselves as they stared at the sea of blood nervously and anxiously. Around 5 minutes later, Houston finally resurfaced from the sea of blood. There was explicit excitement and joy on his face as he stared at his hands. Around 5 minutes later, Houston finally resurfaced from the sea of blood. There was explicit excitement and joy on his face as he stared at his hands. There were 9, thumb-sized, red blood beads in his hands. Each bead was translucent and extremely bright, shining with dazzling red light. It seemed like pieces of red quartz. However, each bead pulsed with extremely powerful energy that was enough to surprise over gods and even make the expressions of God Kings change. The energy within the 9 beads was just too powerful. If it erupted at that moment, it would be enough to unleash devastating might, easily killing over gods. Jianchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather all noticed the 9 blood beads in Houston's hands. They all became very stern. These 9 beads should be the blood beads condensed from the essence of blood that Fei He mentioned. The Empyrean demon cult has put in so much effort into condensing these blood beads, but they've all been taken away by Uncle Xiu, so there'll definitely be a great disturbance from the Empyrean demon cult. Jian Chen's heart was rather heavy. He could tell just how important this place was to the Empyrean demon cult from the formations here. Or in other words, he could tell just how important this place was to the Great Elder of the Empyrean demon cult. If the Great Elder personally came to the Cloud Plain, he would not be able to imagine the outcome. After taking the 9 blood beads, Houston was just about to leave. Suddenly, he froze slightly and looked at the sky. He looked at the tremendous swirl formed by the chilling winds. After hesitating slightly, he slowly flew up into the sky while the red light from the Empyrean demon orb protected him. Very soon, he disappeared into the tremendous swirl. When he appeared again, another 9 beads of similar sizes had appeared in his hands. They were dark beads. Inside the dark beads was an extremely powerful and pure energy of souls. Now, all 9 soul beads and blood beads had ended up in Houston's hands. At this moment, there was a flash. Fei He had returned to their side. When she saw the 18 beads in Houston's hands, her eyes narrowed as well. She said grimly, "The true upper echelons of the Empyrean demon cult will definitely be alerted now that they've lost the blood and soul beads. It might even alarm the Great Elder directly. We can't stay here for long." We must leave as soon as possible. The Empyrean demon cult will probably do something big afterwards. Houston also understood the severity of the matter. After taking away the 9 blood beads and soul beads, he directly flew out, passing through the formation just like before, where it was frightening but not dangerous. However, passing through the formation was extremely difficult for Houston. When he emerged, the terrifying killing intent in there had almost made him collapse. His face was ashen. Fei He was stern. With a flip of her hand, the bright moon divine hall appeared, and she said, "Enter the divine hall quickly. We need to leave as soon as possible." The 4 of them did not hesitate at all and immediately entered the bright moon divine hall. Fei He stowed the divine hall away and used the laws of the primordial realm to erase the presences and traces they left behind. Then, she disappeared with a flash, making her way out of the castle with lightning speed. All the formations in the castle had been activated by now. Countless formations stacked upon one another, interlocking together into one, causing the security of the entire castle to become virtually impenetrable. Fei He's face was cold as her eyes shone with a sharp light. A terrifying presence enough to frighten the world emanated from her. A layer of moonlight covered here as she directly collided against the formation with the power of laws from the primordial realm. Boom! The entire castle trembled from that. Even though the killing formation in her way had combined with all the formations, it still cracked before Fei He's powerful strike, directly collapsing. Fei He did not slow down at all. She continued to give off a soaring presence, ramming her way through layers upon layers of formations that blocked her way like she was unstoppable. She retreated from the castle quickly. Even though the castle's defenses had made it virtually impregnable from both the inside and the outside, there were no killing formations that could stop Fei He in the entire castle apart from the ones that protected the pool of blood. Even when all these formations interlinked with one another, resulting in a drastic increase in strength, it was still unable to stop Fei He. At that moment, the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult that all the infinite primes on the cloud plane feared and did not dare to approach was like the back garden of her own house to Fei He. It was unable to stop her at all. Boom! At this moment, a heavy sound suddenly rang out through the entire castle. Fei He formed a seal with her hands, using a technique to smash through the many layers of formations with her full strength, creating a hole in the castle. Afterwards, she emerged from there and completely vanished. At the same time, shackles condensed from moonlight force trapped the 3 vice leaders in there. Their bodies were bound, completely immobilizing them. At this moment, the demonic aura around the 3 of them pulsed violently. They roared out at the same time, and under their full strength, they finally reduced the shackles around them to pieces. Then, they vanished from there silently. When they appeared once again, they had arrived before the hole that Fei He had created. The 3 of them stared at the hole, and their faces became extremely sunken. This castle is a god artifact with extremely great defenses. Only chaotic primes can smash through this. Once we activate all the formations in our headquarters, even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes can't escape, yet we were unable to stop this person at all. Which chaotic prime is this person? Let's go to the forbidden grounds quickly. The chaotic prime who intruded on our headquarters stayed there for quite a long time. With that, the 3 of them vanished at that moment. When they appeared again, they had arrived beside the blood pool. They stood outside the formations. Fortunately, the formation is fine. The Great Elder cast down this formation after all. Even if that person possesses the strength of a chaotic prime, it's still impossible for them to smash through it. The 3 of them all let out a sigh of relief when they saw that the formation was completely fine. They could ignore the fact that a chaotic prime had infiltrated their headquarters and killed so many god kings. They could even ignore the fact that there was a huge hole in the castle now. This was because all they needed to do was report the matter, and the higher-ups would send someone to deal with this chaotic prime. The only thing they could not allow was for anything to happen to the blood beads and soul beads in the forbidden grounds. However, when Huayan subconsciously glanced at the depths of the blood pool, his face suddenly froze. It began to pale instantly as he felt intense disbelief. He cried out, why are the blood pearls gone? The two other vice leaders were greatly surprised as well. They all glanced at the pool of blood. With that, blood instantly drained from their faces. They had almost been frightened to death. Oh no, the soul beads are gone as well. Prowess said with a trembling voice. At that moment, the three vice leaders all felt rather lightheaded. They had almost lost their footing and tripped. Fear filled their hearts. How? The blood beads and soul beads are all gone. How do we explain this to the higher-ups? Q, quick. Report to the Grand Elder. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plain, there stood a huge, striking divine hall with a tremendous presence. It gave off a terrifying pressure that was enough to scare the world. In an unknown space extremely distant from the cloud plain, there stood a huge, striking divine hall with a tremendous presence. It gave off a terrifying pressure that was enough to scare the world. The divine hall seemed to be able to rule over an entire region. Even the independent, unknown space seemed to bow down before it, kneeling at the divine hall's feet. At this moment, two balls of light suddenly appeared in a silent, dark secret room at the top of the divine hall. They tore through the darkness like two bolts of lightning, giving the dark room some light. The Empyrean Demon Orb. This is the presence of the Empyrean Demon Orb. Ning Shuang, have you come to the saint's world? A trembling, excited voice suddenly rang out in the pitch-black room. It was filled with reminiscence. The two balls of light that had suddenly appeared were actually a pair of eyes that shone brightly. It was even possible to vaguely make out a figure seated in the secret room from the two balls of light. A large body sat there, giving off a terrifying presence that seemed to be enough to make the sky collapse. How many years, just how many years has it been? I've finally waited till this day. I've already prepared everything in the saint's world. Ning Shuang, we can meet again very soon. The voice filled with reminiscence rang out once again. After 1,000,000 years of preparation, 1,000,000 years of arduous effort, and 1,000,000 years of bitter waiting and eagerness, it was finally happening. Even though the owner of the voice had already forged a heart that would not tremble even if the universe was destroyed, it shook uncontrollably at this moment. He had waited far too long for this day. Master, this one has important matters to report. At this moment, an elderly voice suddenly rang out from outside the secret room. It was filled with respect. Silently, a black-robed old man had appeared outside the secret room. The old man's eyes were deep as if the boundless outer space was hidden in there. As a matter of fact, there seemed to be endless laws interweaving with one another in his eyes as if the ways of the world were resonating. It was like a tremendous universe was evolving in there. Moreover, the presence that the old man gave off from time to time was enough to shock the world. The old man was extremely powerful. However, he stood outside the secret room politely with his head lowered. Respect had filled his face. Is it about the branch on the cloud plain? The voice in the secret room rang out. Exactly that. Master, this one has just received the news that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the branch on the cloud plain has used countless years to condense have been taken away by an unknown chaotic prime, the old man said politely. I know this already. You can go. The mission of the branch on the cloud plain has been completed, said the person in the secret room. The old man was slightly surprised when he heard that. Afterwards, he bowed politely and said, "This one understands. This one bids you farewell." With that, the old man vanished silently. In the secret room, the person with the glowing eyes began to murmur once again, since the Empyrean demon orb has appeared in the saint's world, they must have come up as well. Sigh, it's just a pity that my original body is still trapped. This clone cannot advance to the cloud plane. The old man directly made his way to a hall after he departed. 7 people had already been waiting there for him. These 7 people also possessed powerful presences. They were all experts of the primordial realm. Greetings, Grand Elder. The 7 people all bowed when they saw the old man. Respect filled their faces. Soon afterwards, one of them said, "Grand Elder, according to the images and sketches from the 3 vice leaders from the branch on the cloud plain, we've basically found out who the intruder is. She should be Hao Yu, the person who was ranked 3rd on the God King's throne several 100,000 years ago. Hao Yu is extremely powerful. It's said that when she was a God King, she killed an infinite prime. Her current strength is even greater now. Even if us 7 elders fight her together, we probably would not be able to defeat her," said a beautiful woman who only seemed to be in her 20s. She possessed natural charm, where her actions could invoke an irresistible sense of desire. At this moment, a terrifying pressure suddenly appeared. As if it could squash the sky, it enveloped the entire hall with a terrifying might. Aside from the Grand Elder, the expressions of the 7 other powerful primordial realm experts changed with the appearance of the pressure. The 7 of them felt like they were suffocating from the pressure. They even felt like the surrounding space was pressing down on them. "Grand Elder, do you need me to set out and capture the intruder of the branch on the cloud plain?" A deep voice rang through the hall. It was cold and merciless, icy and terrifying. The Grand Elder stood there indifferently, where it was impossible to tell what he was thinking. "No need. The mission of the branch on the cloud plain has already been completed. We don't need to interfere with the matters there too much, just in case it foils Master's grand plan." The 7 elders looked at one another before accepting the orders. The terrifying pressure that engulfed the entire hall vanished with what the Grand Elder had said. Princess Tian sat in her own residence within the imperial palace of the Shi Empire in the northern region of the Cloud Plain. In her hands, there was an embroidered box that she played around with. She was very much curious about it. "Just what is Jianghu giving to my aunt and uncle?" He acted so mysteriously about it, and he even said that my aunt and uncle might like it, Princess Tian murmured softly. However, she did not open the box. She said with some annoyance, "It's a pity that it has been so many days, and aunt and uncle have yet to return. I wonder when I can give this box to aunt. And aunt has been in a rather bad mood recently. Jianghu is a supreme over-god, so aunt and uncle should accept a gift from him, right?" Princess Tian felt rather uneasy inside. Looking at the box, she did not feel confident about giving it to them. "Your Highness, the Emperor and Empress have returned." At this moment, a female servant's voice rang out from outside. With that, Princess Tian's eyes lit up. She put the box away in her space ring and immediately ran out. In the Shi Empire, it was an extremely difficult matter for many of the princes and princesses to see the Emperor and the Empress. There were even some princes and princesses who would never even hold a conversation with the Emperor or the Empress. However, Princess Tian was an exception. Her status in the Shi Empire was extremely special. She could visit the Emperor and Empress whenever she wished. Sienna greets aunt. Princess Tian bowed within a luxurious residential palace with a faint smile on her face. She seemed to be composed and leisurely, without appearing stiff for rules at all. Princess Tian bowed within a luxurious residential palace with a faint smile on her face. She seemed to be composed and leisurely, without appearing stiff for rules at all. Before her stood a graceful, dignified woman behind a screen. The screen obscured her appearance, only revealing a blurry figure. She was the Empress of the Shi Empire. "Oh, it's Sienna. I've just returned, and you've come to see me. You sure receive news fast," the Empress said from behind the screen. Her voice was kind and filled with warmth. "A lot of things have happened in the Empire during this time. I was afraid that Aunt's mood would be affected, so I especially came to spend some time," said Princess Tian. She seemed considerate, and at the same time, there was a sense of concern in her voice. Sigh, the Empress sighed gently as if there was something indescribable and sorrowful affecting her mood. She seemed rather dispirited at that moment and said, "Sienna, come. Let's talk." "Yes, Aunt." Princess Tian slowly made her way over and went around the screen, sitting beside the Empress liberally. "Oh right. And, in the days that you were gone, an extremely surprising supreme overgod appeared in our northern region, said Princess Tian. The light in her eyes flickered as she paid close attention to the Empress' face. Seeing how the Empress did not react too violently, she continued, although this supreme overgod isn't a member of our northern region, he really is powerful. I think there's probably no one in the entire northern region that can rival this supreme overgod because he can defeat a god king as an overgod. I also heard that the god king was no ordinary god king, but the disciple of a large sect from the Xiandao Empire. What is even more surprising is after the overgod defeated the god king, he was not injured at all. And, don't you think this overgod is powerful? The Empress' expression remained the same. She nodded slightly, to fight a god king as an overgod and achieve victory. That's right, he is indeed a supreme overgod with surprising potential. This strength might even be enough to rival the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque. Even Ant thinks so. He, I also think that this supreme overgod has the right to challenge the person ranked first on the overgod's plaque, Princess Tian smiled sweetly. Soon afterwards, she seemed to think of something, and she suddenly took out an embroidered box from her space ring. She said, "Oh right. Aunt, when I visited this supreme overgod last time, he said to give this box to aunt or uncle." Reaching this point, the princess paused. She stared at the box in her hand and said in thought, inside must be a gift from the supreme overgod for aunt and uncle. The Empress frowned when she heard that. She said, "Siener, how can you accept anyone's gift for me? It's not like you don't understand this. You better return this box to that person." The Empress left no room for argument with how dignified her voice was. The princess became slightly troubled. When she thought about how stern Jian Chen was when he gave the box to her, she understood that the item inside would definitely be special. However, she understood the temperament of the Empress extremely well. Since the Empress was unwilling to take the gift, anything she tried would be a futile effort. "Yes, aunt. I understand." The princess became rather dejected. She stowed the box away unhappily and left the Empress' residence before long. However, the princess did not forget what Jian Chen had told her before. She only needed to give it to the Empress or the Shi Emperor. Since the Empress did not want it, she went to find the Shi Emperor. With Princess Tian's status, seeing the Shi Emperor was naturally no problem. Very soon, she arrived in the Shi Emperor's study room. When Princess Tian met the Supreme Emperor of the Shi Empire, the famed ruler who had basically caused an upheaval through the entire empire when he ascended to the throne, was sitting back in a precious chair sculpted from crystal that had depictions of dragons. He propped up his forehead with one hand as he rested. However, there was heavy exhaustion on his dignified and resolute face. "It's Siener. Siener, is there anything you need me for?" the Shi Emperor said. His voice was filled with warmth. He did not move his posture in the chair at all. He did not even open his eyes. At that moment, the Shi Emperor no longer possessed his usual coldness or his usual awe. He only seemed like a lonely and injured soul. "Uncle," Princess Tian hesitated when she saw how exhausted the Shi Emperor was. She originally wanted to give Jian Chen's box to him, but she found it rather difficult to bring herself to do something like that after seeing how exhausted he was. Uncle's lost daughter has always weighed on his heart during these years. He is mentally and psychologically torn. Now that he has finally gotten some time to rest, am I really going to disturb him? The princess thought. In the end, she sighed inside and did not choose to take out the box at this time. Fei He had returned to the Tian Yuan clan in the Dong'an province with Jian Chen and everyone else. They had originally departed soundlessly, without raising any attention, so they did the same when they returned. There'll probably be a lot of movements from the Empyrean demon cult soon since they lost the 9 blood beads and soul beads. You have to be careful. You mustn't reveal any traces at all, or no one will be able to save you. Fei He personally cast down a barrier in a secret room deep underground and warned them sternly. At this moment, the Empyrean demon orb suddenly drifted out of Houston's sea of consciousness. It shone with dazzling red light. In the next moment, 10 thumb-sized beads drifted out. The 10 beads were 5 soul beads and 5 blood beads. They drifted towards Jianchen, Houston, Shenzhen, Sacred Feather, and Fei He. The artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb has told me that it's gifting these blood beads and soul beads to everyone to thank you all for your help. Houston passed on the artifact spirit's message. Although these blood beads and soul beads were condensed from the blood and energy of souls from countless lives, the beads have already become the purest crystal after the formations refined them for so many years. As a result, absorbing the energy from them won't leave any side effects behind. Fei He stared at the blood beads and soul beads and studied them seriously. She nodded, that's right. The beads have already been refined for so many years that all factors of evil and unstable elements have been eliminated. The beads have become great nourishment, which can increase your strength by quite a lot. Fei He glanced at Jianchen when she said that. Afterwards, she swung her arm and sent the beads that had drifted before her to Jianchen. She said, "These beads are useless to me. You take them." Jianchen looked at the beads. He hesitated. Although the blood and soul beads were extremely nourishing, enough for the cultivation of a person to skyrocket, they were still condensed from the essence of blood and energy of souls from countless people. To him, only demonic cultivators would use objects like this to cultivate. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather also became hesitant as they looked at the blood and soul beads. Like Jianchen, they did not accept the beads. Shenzhen and Sacred Feather also became hesitant as they looked at the blood and soul beads. Like Jianchen, they did not accept the beads. A while later, Shenzhen said, "Although I'm not a part of any righteous way, I don't belong to any demonic path either. The Empyrean demon cult has slaughtered countless individuals, using their lives to condense these beads. Even if they can greatly increase the cultivation of a person, I would be no different from a person who walks the demonic path if I use them." With that, the 2 beads before Shenzhen returned to Houston. He said sternly, "Houston, these things don't suit me. However, you practice a demonic cultivation method, so there should be nothing wrong with you using it. As a result, I'll gift these beads to you." Shenzhen had spoken these words firmly. Even though the beads could greatly increase his cultivation, they did not entice Shenzhen at all. Shenzhen is right. These beads are indeed unsuitable for us. After all, we do not walk a demonic path of cultivation, while our cultivation methods aren't from a demonic path either. If we use something that was condensed from the blood and souls of countless lives to cultivate, it'll affect our mental state. If it's severe, it might even lead to inner demons, which will affect our future cultivation. Jianchen also gifted his beads to Houston. Even though formations had refined the beads, removing all the evil and unstable impurities from them, their origins were still a little too vicious. Jianchen had his moralis. If the beads came from magical beasts or other vicious beasts, he would naturally have no problem with them. After all, he had already accepted such an idea. However, the beads did not come from magical beasts, so he was unable to accept it. "I don't need it either. Uncle Xiao, it's best if you take them for yourself," said Sacred Feather as well, giving his beads to Houston. Houston looked at the 4 soul beads and blood beads that hovered before him. After hesitating slightly, he said, "All right then. Since you all don't need it, I won't hold back. I'll accept them for the Empyrean demon orb for now. These items are very useful to the Empyrean demon orb. Why would a god artifact need these items?" Fei He stared at Houston and asked steadily. Houston shook his head. "Actually, I find this very strange as well. The Empyrean demon orb has simply surprised me too much in our trip to the headquarters." Fei He stared at Houston deeply and said, "Your Empyrean demon orb is probably not as simple as it seems. I'd tell you to use it as little as possible, and if you can, abandon it, just in case it dooms you." Houston immediately became solemn. He knew that as a terrifyingly powerful primordial realm expert, Fei He definitely would not give groundless advice. Afterwards, Fei He looked at Jianchen again. She said, "I'm going to leave. What happened in the Empyrean demon cult will definitely alarm the upper echelons. If I stay, it'll only lead to more trouble for you. You have to be careful in the future. With that, Fei He hesitated slightly. Afterwards, she said to Jianghu secretly, I suspect that the Empyrean demon orb is somehow connected to the Empyrean demon cult, but I don't know whether it's good or bad. Jianghu nodded slightly to show that he understood. In reality, he also had suspected that. After all, the formations that guarded the blood beads and soul beads were so powerful that even chaotic primes would probably be doomed if they entered, yet the Empyrean demon orb was able to move through such terrifying formations freely. It simply did not make sense. If the Empyrean demon orb was a god artifact that specialized in suppressing formations, it would be explainable at the very least. However, Jianghu had learnt from the sword spirits that the Empyrean demon orb was the famed treasure of the strongest demon monarch of the demon's world, the Empyrean demon monarch. It could both attack and defend, but there were no rumors of it being able to suppress formations. As a result, this could only be explained as the formations in the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult had been set up in a special manner, where they would be useless against the Empyrean demon orb. However, the part that Jianghu did not understand was that one came from the demon's world, while the other was in the saint's world. Why would they be connected? Jianghu did not think too much of the name, as who knows how many people who shared the same names and surnames existed in the world. It just happened too frequently. After a simple farewell, Fei He vanished silently from the secret room. In the secret room, Jianghu had stated his doubts over why the Empyrean demon orb could move through the formation so easily. Unfortunately, Houston also had no idea because he had only been following the orders of the artifact spirit in the Empyrean demon orb. However, when Houston asked the artifact spirit, it told him that it had seen the formations before, so it knew the method to go through them. Clearly, everyone did not believe this answer, as Houston and the artifact spirit had never undergone any procedure to get through the formation. Instead, they had directly swaggered in, passing through in a straight line. The artifact spirit of the Empyrean demon orb is hiding secrets from us, thought Jianghu. Then, he took our space ring and passed it to Houston. He said sternly, Uncle Xiao, it's no longer safe for you to stay here with the soul beads and blood beads. There are some divine crystals in there. You have to go to the Heavenly Moon Empire as soon as possible and then go to the Blood Sun Empire through a teleportation formation there. Then, you need to use a regional teleportation formation to go to the central region. The central region is much more powerful than the 4 other regions. You should be much safer there, so use this opportunity to increase your strength. Houston also understood the severity of the matter. He did not turn down Jianghu's offer. He immediately left the Tian Yuan clan after bidding farewell to everyone. He had obtained the blood and soul beads, so the matter that took priority was naturally increasing his own strength as soon as possible. Now that the Empyrean demon cult had lost such treasures, it would be extremely likely that they would send even more terrifying experts here. The senses of the souls from primordial realm experts were so terrifying that no matter how well he hid in the southern region, he would not be able to escape a primordial realm expert search. Once the beads were exposed, the consequences would be unimaginable. Houston left through the teleportation formation in the forbidden grounds of the clan. In order to avoid any suspicion, Jiangchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather immediately charged for the front lines. Now, the ceasefire period was just about to end. A huge army had gathered on the side of the Divine Kingdom once again, standing on the reconstructed walls in the face of the enemy. The soldiers of the 3 armies gathered several dozen kilometers away from the fortress. Where they gathered, demonic aura formed thick, black clouds, causing the world there to descend into darkness. On the castle walls, many god kings gathered on the side of the Divine Kingdom of Pingtian. However, their attitudes towards Jiangchen had changed drastically when they saw him this time. They all greeted him with smiles. Jiangchen looked at them and discovered some unfamiliar faces. After a simple introduction, he learnt that they were reinforcements from the empires in the southern region. However, their enthusiasm left Jiangchen rather troubled. Even if they knew there was a primordial realm expert behind him, there was no need for them to behave like this. Jiangchen, I never thought you would defeat a god king in the northern region. That really was shocking. The divine king made his way over and smiled at Jiangchen. Only with that did Jiangchen understand. His victory over a god king in the northern region had already spread to here. Look, the Empyrean demon cult seems to be retreating, a god king said in surprise from the castle walls. Everyone immediately redirected their attention away from Jiangchen, staring up ahead at the camp of the three armies. With their eyes, they were naturally able to see what was happening several dozen kilometers away clearly in such an open area. Jiangchen also clearly saw the three armies camped there. They were actually retreating at this moment, gradually disappearing from everyone's view. Chapter 1963, Visiting the Earth Spirit Sect, 1. The Empyrean demon cult's sudden retreat had greatly confused the god kings who stood on the wall. After half a month of preparation, they were all ready for battle. They had made up their minds to fight a prolonged battle against the Empyrean demon cult. However, just when the agreed ceasefire was about to end, and they were about to continue their war, the Empyrean demon cult that had the upper hand was suddenly retreating. This surprising move had bewildered the god kings on the walls. They had no idea why this was happening. Even the divine king revealed doubt and confusion as he stared at the armies that had already retreated into the distance. They've retreated? The Empyrean demon cult is just going to retreat like this? Surely there isn't some scheme involved, right? A god king said from the walls as he watched everything unfold with quite some disbelief. I know how the Empyrean demon cult acts extremely well. With the support of the Great Elder, the Empyrean demon cult can rampage as they wish on the cloud plane. They can destroy whatever they want. It's exactly because of the Great Elder behind them that the powerful organizations on the cloud plane dare not to lay their hands on the Empyrean demon cult. As a result, the Empyrean demon cult has created several storms of blood in the past several tens of thousand years, committing atrocities of massacres. In particular, the invasion this time could be regarded as unprecedented. Not only were all 9 armies mobilized, but they even attacked 3 regions at the same time, and even their vice leaders set out. This is extremely rare. They would never retreat so easily unless their goals were fulfilled, said a sagely old man with a duster. That's right. The retreat of the Empyrean demon cult will definitely be more complicated than it seems. We can't become careless, said another god king. The god kings on the walls all stated their thoughts and guesses. However, none of them believed the Empyrean demon cult was truly retreating. Even the divine king thought of it like that. This was because the Empyrean demon cult was used to using force. Coupled with the size of their army this time, it was impossible for them to retreat willingly unless they caused a massacre enough to shock the entire cloud plane based on how they acted in the past. Among them, only Jiangchen, Xinjian, and Sacred Feather knew that the retreat of the Empyrean demon cult was not for some ulterior motives or schemes. They were really retreating. However, Jiangchen also had no idea how long the 9 armies would remain inactive. He understood the secret behind why the Empyrean demon cult had been declaring wars everywhere from his trip to the headquarters. Now that the 9 blood beads and soul beads that the Empyrean demon cult had spent who knows how long on had been stolen, there were only 2 possible actions they could take next. First, they could give up on the wars and devote themselves to finding the blood and soul beads. Secondly, they could continue waging wars and condense the beads again. I hope Uncle Xiao can reach the central region safely. It's just a pity that I don't have enough 5-color divine crystals on me. Otherwise, I would have gotten Uncle Xiao to directly leave the cloud plane and go somewhere else. It would be even safer with that, thought Jiangchen. He could only pray for Uncle Xiao right now, as he was unable to offer any other support. Just as everyone was discussing the withdrawal of the Empyrean demon cult, they received a shocking piece of news. The Empyrean demon cult had sent groups of people to the surrounding divine kingdoms to engage in wanton massacres, leading to an endless slaughter once again. It filled many cities and provincial cities with blood, and no one was spared wherever they passed by. Even a few royal capitals of divine kingdoms had suffered this fate, with all the people there completely massacred by the Empyrean demon cult. The god kings who guarded the divine kingdoms were slain by several protectors from the Empyrean demon cult as well. In the end, 3 divine kingdoms that neighbored the divine kingdom of Pingtian were destroyed. The other divine kingdoms suffered losses of varying degrees as well. The god kings who stood on the walls fumed when they received the news. The divine king sighed gently. There was some helplessness on his face. He said nothing. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He analyzed to himself, in terms of time, the Empyrean demon cult moved exactly when Fei He infiltrated the headquarters. Clearly, they wanted to gather some more blood and energy of souls so that they could increase the quality of the blood and soul beads. It shouldn't be for recondensing the blood and soul beads. Afterwards, the coalition army on the divine kingdom of Pingtian's side remained on high vigilance. They did not leave the fortress at all. Half a month later, when a god king risked his life by approaching 10,000 kilometers from the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult, did they receive accurate information. Only then did they truly believe the Empyrean demon cult had withdrawn. The divine king and the reinforcing god kings were all relieved when they received the reliable information. The divine king immediately clasped his fist at everyone. He said amicably but no less dignified, "Everyone, looks like the war this time has truly ended. I am grateful for all your assistance and reinforcement. You are too polite, Your Majesty. The Empyrean demon cult is vicious. Against such a horrible cult, we should unite together against them." An old man clasped his fist at the divine king and said extremely politely. He was an elder of the Earth Spirit Sect. Of course, he was not one of the 3 elders who had come to the divine kingdom initially. Instead, he belonged to the second wave of reinforcements. Then, the elder looked at Jian Chen, and he said apologetically, "Brother Jian Chen, I hope you don't take offense from what those disappointing disciples of our Earth Spirit Sect did to you." The old man sighed gently after reaching this point. "It's just a pity that many of our disciples have fallen on the battlefield, or our Earth Spirit Sect will definitely punish them severely so that we can provide an explanation to Brother Jian Chen." All the god kings who stood on the walls looked at Jian Chen and the elder from the Earth Spirit Sect. They had heard about Jian Chen's grievance with the Earth Spirit Sect. If Jian Chen was a supreme overgod who could barely manage to make it onto the overgod's plaque, there would be no need for the Earth Spirit Sect to worry too much even if they had to take him seriously with their strength. However, he was a supreme overgod with shocking strength, someone who could challenge the person who ranked first on the overgod's plaque. That changed the situation completely because an overgod like that could fend off god kings, and if they broke through to god king, they would be able to make it onto the god king's throne. It was rumored that those who ranked within the top 10 on the God King's throne possessed extremely shocking strength that was enough to fend off early infinite primes. As a matter of fact, they could even accomplish the shocking feat of killing regular infinite primes as God Kings. Moreover, it was revealed that a primordial realm expert was supporting Jian Chen through the matters with Yaxi Lian. The Earth Spirit Sect was naturally reluctant to offend someone like that. Jian Chen remained indifferent under the attention of all the god kings from different organizations. He said, "This matter isn't really related to the dead disciples of the Earth Spirit Sect. The true suspect is someone else. It's impossible for a few disciples to possess something as precious as a god king level talisman." The elder's face immediately froze from that. He sighed gently and said nothing else. After bidding farewell to the divine king, he left with the disciples of the Earth Spirit Sect. He knew that the grievances between the Earth Spirit Sect and Jian Chen could not be resolved in just a few words. He would let the sect master and so on deal with it instead. Now that the war against the Empyrean demon cult had ended, the god kings from the various organizations all retreated. They returned to where they came from. The divine king arrived before Jian Chen and said, "Jian Chen, let me go deal with some matters after the battle first. In 3 days, I'll personally accompany you to the Earth Spirit Sect." The people from the Earth Spirit Sect haven't been looking at the bigger picture, attacking people on the same side as them during the war. I will definitely demand an explanation from them for this. Towards the end, the divine king's voice became rather solemn as a vicious light flickered through his eyes. "You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.